By the time Nora realized her cousins had divided their grandmother's money, Paige was already writing the numbers on the back of a funeral home envelope. 84.6 for me, 84.6 for Caleb, she said, tapping the calculator with one pale pink fingernail. Minus whatever fee the bank charges, if they charge one. They always charge one, Caleb said. He had loosened his black tie and tucked the end between two shirt buttons, as if the funeral had been a long shift at a restaurant he no longer owned. Nora looked from the envelope to the two folders on Ruth Bell's dining table. The folders had come from her grandmother's accountant. Paige had labeled them in blue ink before Nora arrived. Cash account 1. Cash account 2. Beside them sat a third folder with no label, only an old brass key resting on top. And the shop? Nora asked. Aunt Elaine stopped wrapping pound cake in foil. Paige's calculator went dark in her hand. Caleb glanced at the key. What about it? I want it. For several seconds, the only sound in the room was the refrigerator motor kicking on. Everybody knew Nora had not set foot in Bell Street sewing for 8 years. Everybody knew why. Paige lowered the calculator carefully, like it contained something that might spill. You want Grandma's shop? Yes. Aunt Elaine folded the foil over the cake and pressed the seam with both thumbs. Nora, honey. It was the particular honey she used when she wanted to call someone foolish without leaving fingerprints. Nora kept her eyes on the key. Ruth had carried it on a red cord inside her purse, along with peppermint candies, 3 pens that never worked, and a tiny pair of folding scissors that had once gotten her detained at the airport. The cord was gone. Somebody had cleaned the key. Caleb leaned back. His chair made the short, complaining squeak it had made at every Thanksgiving that Nora could remember. The building needs everything, he said. Roof, wiring, plumbing, maybe an exorcism. Caleb, Paige murmured. What? Grandma said the bathroom light came on by itself. The switch was upside down. Exactly how it starts. Nora almost smiled. That was the danger of Caleb. He could be selfish in a way that left the room feeling as if it had merely been entertained. Paige turned the funeral home envelope over. The shop wasn't included as one of the equal cash distributions. There aren't equal cash distributions, Nora said. There are 2 accounts and 3 grandchildren. No one answered that. The dining room still carried traces of the reception, coffee rings on Ruth's lace tablecloth, a stack of damp paper plates, the buttery smell of rolls Aunt Elaine had warmed and forgotten in the oven. Ruth's framed portrait from the funeral home leaned against the china cabinet. The photographer had softened every line in her face except the stubborn one between her eyebrows. Elaine sat across from Nora. She was Ruth's only surviving daughter, though surviving had always sounded too dramatic for the way Elaine moved through life. Elaine scheduled dental cleanings 6 months ahead. She kept extra batteries in labeled drawers. Even grief had been assigned serving utensils. Your grandmother's instructions give the 3 of you room to agree on how to divide the estate, Elaine said. That does not mean you need to make a decision tonight. Paige and Caleb already did. We discussed a preference, Paige said. You wrote your name on the money. I labeled folders with your names to keep the paperwork organized. Nora looked at the first folder. Under cash account 1, in smaller letters, Paige had written Paige. The second said Caleb. Paige's handwriting was rounded and elegant, the kind that made even theft look like a bridal invitation. Caleb rubbed a thumb across his jaw. We figured the building would get sold. Once it's cleaned out and fixed up enough to list, whatever it brings gets divided. Who cleans it out? Another silence, shorter this time. There would be expenses, Paige said. Who handles them? Nora, Elaine said quietly. No one has put that on you. They had. They had simply done it in the family's preferred manner, by leaving an empty space in a conversation and waiting for Nora to stand in it. At 26, Nora was good at standing in empty spaces. She covered shifts when Marlene's back went out at the hotel. She hemmed pants for coworkers who promised to pay Friday. She had stayed with Ruth during the last 4 nights at hospice, while Paige sent long voice messages about how she wanted to remember Grandma alive and sharp. And Caleb twice got as far as the parking lot before deciding he could not go inside. Nora had not complained. Complaining required the belief that somebody might change. She touched the brass key with one finger. It was colder than she expected. I'll take the shop, she said. Building, contents, all of it. They can split the cash. Elaine's face changed, not much. A slight pull at one corner of her mouth, gone almost immediately. Nora, Paige said, the cash is worth more. I know. You pay rent for one room. I know where I live, Paige. I'm not insulting you. I'm saying you're the one who could most use actual money. Then why didn't you leave me any? Caleb's chair stopped squeaking. Paige looked down at the envelope. We thought you'd get a third after the sale. After I cleaned up the shop. After I found somebody to fix it. After I dealt with buyers and boxes and all the things nobody wants to touch. I would help. You put Grandma's good shears in your purse before the funeral. Paige's head snapped up. Mom told me I could have those. Elaine closed her eyes briefly. I told you we would sort the personal things later. You said Grandma always meant them for me. I said she let you use them once. That is not what I heard. Caleb gave a low whistle. Okay. We have reached the scissors phase of grief. Nora picked up the key. Nobody stopped her, which hurt more than if they had. Elaine followed her into the kitchen after the others began gathering papers. Nora stood at the sink rinsing a coffee cup that was already clean. Above the faucet, Ruth's ceramic rooster grinned with painted stupidity. You don't have to prove anything, Elaine said. Nora kept rinsing. I'm washing a cup. You know what I mean. No, I know what you want to mean. Elaine reached past her and turned off the water. Your grandmother could make a burden feel like a privilege. She was gifted that way. The words were sharp, but Elaine's hand remained on the faucet, trembling slightly. Nora remembered that Elaine had grown up over the shop too. She had spent half her adult life insisting she could not sew on a button. Did she ask you to keep it? Nora said. No. Did she ask you to sell it? No. Then I'm not sure why you're the only one warning me, because Paige sees an old storefront she can photograph. Caleb sees a building he doesn't have to repair. You see your mother? There it was. Nora dried the cup with a dish towel, stiff from too much starch. Elaine softened her voice. That place wasn't kind to Leah. Places don't make choices. No, people do. Nora met her aunt's eyes. Elaine looked away first, toward the dining room, where Paige was explaining that the shears had been misunderstood. 8 years earlier, Nora had stood in the sewing shop with rain running down the back of her shirt and begged Ruth to come to the hospital. Leah's condition had worsened that morning. Nora had called 3 times. Ruth had answered on the 4th and said she had 6 choir robes spread across the cutting table, and people were depending on her. People are always depending on you, Nora had shouted. Mom is dying, and you're fixing sleeves. Ruth had gone pale but had not taken off her work apron. Nora left alone. Leah died 2 days later. Afterward, Ruth closed the shop for 12 days. Then she reopened without ever explaining why she had stayed. Nora moved into Ruth's house because there was nowhere else to go, and they learned to love each other around the edges of the question. Ruth packed Nora's lunches. Nora drove Ruth to eye appointments. They watched murder shows on Tuesday nights and argued about whether anyone with that much blood on his shirt would really stop to wipe his fingerprints off a lamp. They spoke about everything except Leah and the shop. At the front door, Paige held out the 2 cash folders to Elaine. The unlabeled folder remained on the table. We'll need the agreement witnessed, Elaine said. Nothing is final tonight. It feels pretty final, Caleb said, pulling on his coat. Congratulations, Nor. You're a land baron now. Go haunt your own bathroom. He grinned, relieved she had played along. Then he hugged her. Caleb's hugs were always convincing. That was another danger. Paige did not hug her. She slipped Ruth's shears out of her purse and laid them beside the unlabeled folder. I wasn't stealing them, she said. I didn't say you were. You made it sound like I was. Nora looked at the heavy silver handles, polished by Ruth's fingers. You took what you wanted before anyone else could ask. Paige's face went still. For 1 second, Nora thought she might apologize. Instead, Paige picked up her handbag. I hope the shop is what you think it is. Nora waited until the front door shut before whispering, So do I. Her rented room looked smaller when she returned that night. The laundromat dryers below sent a steady vibration through the floor, making the water in her bedside glass tremble. A half-finished pair of hotel uniform pants lay across her folding table. Beside them was an electric bill with a yellow late notice and a jar containing $3.26 in alteration money. Nora set the shop key beside the jar. Under the harsh light, it did not look like an inheritance. It looked like an accusation. She slept badly and woke before 5 to toast bagels for conference guests at the Hawthorne Hotel. By 8, she had poured enough coffee to float a car. Marlene, the breakfast supervisor, watched Nora arrange blueberry muffins with unnecessary force. "You mad at baked goods?" Marlene asked. "No." "You put that one down like it owed you rent." Nora adjusted the muffin. Marlene was 58, broad-shouldered, and able to carry 6 plates on one arm while remembering which guest had complained about the melon. She looked at Nora's black funeral dress under her hotel apron. "How'd it go yesterday?" "My cousin's got $169,000. Marlene paused with a pitcher of orange juice. "Each?" "Together." "Oh. I was about to develop a personal relationship with your cousins. I got a building with possible electrical possession." Marlene considered this. "Commercial? An old sewing shop. You sew." "Not like she did." "Everybody says that about a dead woman. Dead women never burn biscuits or sew a sleeve on backward. My grandmother never sewed a sleeve on backward. See? Started already." At 2 that afternoon, Nora took the number 11 bus toward Bell Street. She nearly stayed on when it reached her stop. The doors folded open with a sigh, and the driver glanced at her in the mirror. "You getting off?" Apparently she was. The shop stood in the middle of a narrow brick block between a locksmith and a restaurant, whose faded awning still advertised Monday meatloaf. Bell Street. Sewing stretched across the front window in flaking gold letters. Beneath it, smaller paint announced alterations, repairs, bridal, formal, uniforms. Ruth had once paid Nora $20 to scrape off the word draperies after declaring curtains too much fabric for too little gratitude. Brown paper covered the inside of the glass. Nora unlocked the door. A brass bell chimed overhead, absurdly cheerful. The smell reached her first: dust, machine oil, old steam, and something faintly sweet, like the peppermints Ruth carried in her purse. The cutting table occupied the center of the room. 3 sewing machines waited along the left wall beneath metal task lamps. Garment bags crowded a rack at the back, each with a paper tag pinned near the zipper. Ruth's stool stood slightly crooked in front of the industrial juki. Nora did not touch it. She walked behind the counter instead. An appointment book lay open to the week Ruth entered hospice. Names filled every line. Some had check marks, some had question marks. Several were circled twice. On top of the book sat a yellow note in Ruth's handwriting. "Call Mrs. Barnes, black suit." Nora picked it up, then saw another note beneath it. "Vernon has jackets," then another. "Marisol, robes due." Friday, the shop phone rang. Nora jumped so hard her hip struck the counter. The ringing stopped, then began again almost immediately. She lifted the receiver. Bell Street Sewing. The name came out naturally. That frightened her. A woman said, "Finally, I've been calling for 6 days. Is Ruth there?" Nora gripped the cord. "No, ma'am, Ruth passed away." The woman inhaled, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "Oh," she said. "Oh, Lord, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Thank you." Another silence. Then gently, almost apologetically, the woman asked, "Do you happen to know if she finished my black suit?" Nora looked toward the garment rack. There were 43 bags. "I'll find out," she said. The bell over the door rang behind her. A woman with silver threaded through her dark hair stepped inside, carrying a cardboard box against one hip. She took in Nora, the uncovered window, and the phone receiver. "You're Leah's daughter," she said. Nora nodded. The woman set the box on the cutting table. Inside were 3 half-finished black choir robes. "I'm Marisol," she said, "and unless you plan to bury this place with Ruth, we have work to do." Marisol did not wait for an invitation. She took off her coat, draped it over Ruth's stool, and began lifting the robes from the box. "This seam puckered because the fabric hates me," she said. "The feeling is mutual." Ruth was going to steam it flat. Nora still held the phone to her ear. "Hello?" Mrs. Barnes said. "Yes, ma'am. I'm looking." She stretched the cord as far as it would go and moved down the garment rack, reading tags. Navy dress, gray slacks, green beaded gown. 2 jackets wrapped together. The bags shifted and whispered against one another. "Black suit," Marisol said, pointing without looking up. "Far end, white bag." Nora found a white garment bag wedged against the wall. Mrs. Barnes was written across the tag, followed by a phone number, and Thursday 3 p.m. The jacket and skirt inside had been pressed. A packet containing 2 spare buttons was pinned to the lining. "I have it," Nora said. Is it finished? Nora looked at Marisol. Marisol walked over, pinched the jacket hem, checked the sleeves, and turned the skirt waistband inside out. Finished. It's finished, Nora repeated. Mrs. Barnes let out a breath. Could I come now? Nora glanced around the dark shop, at the papered windows and the layer of dust on the counter. Yes. When she hung up, Marisol had returned to the choir robes. You knew where it was, Nora said. I brought it over Saturday. You made the alterations? I did the sleeves. Ruth did the waistband. So you worked here? I worked at home. Ruth brought me what my hands were better at, and I brought her what hers were better at. Sometimes we argued until one of us became right. Which one of you was usually right? Me, now that she can't object. Marisol smiled, but it did not hold. She smoothed the robe beneath both palms and studied the puckered seam as if it had personally behaved badly at a funeral. Nora put the receiver down. Did you know she was sick? I knew. She never said how bad it was. She didn't say how bad anything was. If the roof fell in, Ruth would tell you the room had become airy. Nora looked up automatically. A brown water stain spread over one corner of the ceiling. That new? No. Good. Marisol gave her a sideways glance. You have Ruth's sense of humor. I have no idea whether that's a compliment. It depends on the day. She plugged in the old steam iron. The lights above the machines dimmed, then recovered. Nora winced. Is that normal? Normal and safe are not the same question. The shop phone rang again. The next caller wanted to know whether 2 pairs of pants were ready. Nora found one pair on the finished rack and the other folded beneath Ruth's cutting table with a chalk mark still running down one leg. She promised to call back. A man called about a dinner jacket Vernon had apparently taken somewhere. Another woman asked whether Ruth could let out a bridesmaid dress by Saturday. No, Nora said. The word came out before she could soften it. No, she can't? The woman asked. No, I'm sorry. Ruth passed away. Oh. By the 4th time Nora said it, the sentence had become both easier and worse. Each caller went quiet in a different way. One gasped, one began crying, one apologized to Nora, and then, after a respectful pause, asked about a zipper. Marisol worked through all of it. She removed the puckered section from the robe with a small seam ripper she wore on a cord around her neck. She did not hurry. Ruth had sewn the same way, as though speed were something insecure people used to impress cloth. You should put a message on the machine, Marisol said. There's an answering machine under the counter. Nora crouched and found a beige box behind a stack of old catalogs. A red light blinked 27. She stood again. 27 messages? Maybe people calling twice. That's supposed to make me feel better? No. A knock sounded against the glass. Mrs. Barnes peered around the brown paper, one gloved hand shielding her eyes. She was a tall woman in her late 60s, dressed in a camel coat that looked too light for the cold. When Nora unlocked the door, Mrs. Barnes entered with the uncertain posture of someone who had expected a routine errand and found herself at another memorial. You must be the granddaughter, she said. One of them. I'm very sorry. Ruth did my clothes for 26 years. Marisol held up the suit. Try it on? Mrs. Barnes blinked. Now? Unless you became a different size since Saturday. The fitting room curtain dragged along its ceiling track. Nora flicked the switch outside it. The bulb failed, then came on with a weak orange glow. Atmosphere, Marisol said. Mrs. Barnes closed the curtain. Nora searched behind the counter for an invoice. There were carbon copy pads, loose receipts, a coffee mug full of safety pins, and an envelope marked Marisol in Ruth's handwriting. She reached for it, but Marisol said, Later. Nora stopped. Mrs. Barnes emerged in the black suit. The sleeves fell exactly to the first joint of her thumbs. The skirt hung cleanly without pulling at the hips. She turned toward the long mirror, and her shoulders dropped. My husband's service is tomorrow, she said. Nora had assumed the suit was for Ruth's funeral, then felt foolish. The world had not agreed to lose only one person at a time. He always liked this one, Mrs. Barnes continued. Said it made me look like I knew where the bodies were buried. Marisol inspected the back seam. Smart man. He was ridiculous. Mrs. Barnes smiled at the mirror. Her mouth trembled at the edges, but the smile stayed. How much do I owe? Nora found the order tag. It showed a $40 deposit and a balance of $35. Mrs. Barnes opened her purse, counted out 2 20s, and waved away the change. Ruth undercharged, Marisol said after the door closed. For that? For everything. It was a hem and sleeves. It was a lined skirt, hem and jacket sleeves, with buttons that had to be moved. I did not learn it in a dream. Nora took the money from the counter. It was the first cash the shop had made while it belonged to her, though legally it did not yet belong to her, and the agreement still had to be witnessed, and every part of the sentence felt capable of collapsing. She held out $20. Marisol did not take it. You did the sleeves. I did more than $20 of sleeves. I know, but this is what came in. Marisol looked at the money, then at the envelope behind the counter. Open that. Inside were 3 folded order slips and a narrow sheet from a yellow legal pad. Ruth had listed dates, garment numbers, and amounts beside Marisol's name. At the bottom, she had written, total due, $186. Nora read it twice. Was that from before she went to hospice? Some before, some after. After? She gave me work the last time she came here. Said there was no point letting fabric sit around feeling important. Nora imagined Ruth in the shop while her body was failing, sorting garments into other people's hands so promises could survive her. The image irritated her as much as it hurt. I don't have $186 here. I can see that. I can pay you Friday. With what, my hotel check? No. Nora stiffened. I said I'd pay you, and I said no. Shop owes me, shop pays me. You don't take food out of your mouth because Ruth was bad at collecting balances. I'm not taking food out of my mouth. Marisol glanced at her. You have the face of someone who calls crackers dinner. That was one time. How would I know that? Nora placed the 20 in the envelope. Then the shop owes you $166. That's what I said. You swallowed the 100. It's implied. Money likes to be named. Marisol took the envelope and returned it to the counter. Keep a record. Nora found a spiral notebook in the bottom drawer and wrote, Mrs. Barnes, $40 paid, $20 to Marisol. She added cash in shop, $20, then realized the same $20 could not be both paid to Marisol and in the shop. She crossed out both lines. Marisol pretended not to watch. Ruth had a system, Nora asked. Ruth was the system. That is not comforting. It was not always comfortable when she was alive. The steam iron hissed. Marisol rolled a towel, tucked it beneath the robe seam, and showed Nora how to press without shining the fabric. Nora knew the basics, but the robe material shifted under pressure, sliding away from the iron like water. You're fighting it, Marisol said. I'm holding it. You're telling cloth what you want before you find out what it does. It's cloth, so win the argument. Nora loosened her grip. They finished the first robe just after 6. The second needed a sleeve reset. The third had a zipper that caught halfway and a dark spot near the hem that Marisol identified as communion wine. Adult choir? Nora asked. All adults, old enough to know better and still spilling things. The lights flickered again when Nora switched on the second machine. This time, the radio beneath the cutting table came on by itself, releasing 3 seconds of static before a man's voice announced traffic on Interstate 64. Nora unplugged the iron. Electrical possession, she said. Marisol crossed herself without sincerity. Caleb texted while Nora was examining the unfinished pants. Any chance Grandma's old espresso machine is at shop? Nora typed. You don't drink espresso. I'm expanding. Into what? His 3 dots appeared, vanished, then appeared again. Mom says nothing technically distributed yet, so don't throw stuff out. Nora looked around at 43 garment bags, 6 bins of fabric, 2 dress forms, a wall of thread, a rusted filing cabinet, and a cardboard box labeled Zippers, Short, Maybe Bad. She replied, Come get the espresso machine if I find it. Caleb sent a heart. Paige's message arrived 30 seconds later. Please don't let Caleb remove estate property before Friday. Nora turned her phone face down. At 7, Marisol put on her coat. She left the 3 robes hanging together at the front of the finished rack. Choir picks them up tomorrow at 4, she said. I work until 2, then be here by 4. I didn't say I was opening. Marisol buttoned her coat. You answered the phone. I was standing next to it. You found a suit. You told me where it was. You collected money, some money. People have reopened businesses with less. Nora folded her arms. Do you want your $166, or do you actually think I should do this? Yes. That was 2 questions. I gave one answer. At the door, Marisol hesitated. Her fingers rested on the lock above the handle. Ruth said you would come, she said. Nora felt something inside her pull tight. When? The last week she worked. What exactly did she say? She said, Nora will come when everybody stops telling her what she ought to feel. Then she called you stubborn and dropped a box of pins. That sounded enough like Ruth to be true, which did not make it fair. She could have asked me herself. Yes. Marisol did not defend her. That surprised Nora more than the story. After she left, the shop seemed to expand around every unfinished promise. Nora played the answering machine messages one at a time, writing names in the spiral notebook. Mr. Howard, gray slacks. Denise, green gown. Choir robes. Vernon, 3 jackets. Anthony's restaurant, 12 aprons. A woman named Gail who began every message with, Ruth, I know you said Thursday. At message 19, Ruth's voice came through the machine instead. You've reached Bell Street Sewing. Leave your name, number, and what I told you I'd have done, because those may be 3 different things. Nora sat very still. The beep followed, and a man began asking about a torn coat pocket. She let the remaining messages play. Then she turned to a clean page and made 3 columns. Finished, needs work, no idea. The 3rd column filled fastest. Rain began ticking against the front window. Water gathered at the edge of the ceiling stain, swelled into one clear drop, and fell onto the cutting table. Nora placed Ruth's empty peppermint bowl beneath it. Then she switched on the task lamp over the unfinished gray pants and threaded the machine. The machine needle snapped on the first line of stitching. Nora jerked her foot off the pedal. The broken tip struck the metal plate and disappeared. Perfect. She searched the table, the floor, and the folds of her dress. Ruth had once told her a loose machine needle could travel through 3 rooms and find the only bare foot in the house. Nora had been 11 and spent the rest of that summer wearing shoes to bed. She finally found the tip caught in the gray fabric. No blood, no torn cloth. She changed the needle, pulled out the crooked stitches, and began again more slowly. The pants were ordinary charcoal work pants, but the chalk lines made no sense. Ruth had marked the right leg for shortening and left the other untouched. Nora measured both inseams 3 times before noticing one cuff was already basted. The customer's legs were not uneven. Ruth had simply stopped halfway. That unsettled Nora more than the unfinished work itself. Ruth finished things. She might complain, overcharge by $3 because she disliked somebody's husband, or hold a garment hostage until its owner admitted wool could not be washed in a kitchen sink. But she finished. Nora completed the cuff, pressed both legs, and moved the pants to the finished rack. She drew a line through the first item in the needs work column. The satisfaction was small and embarrassingly sharp. By the time she locked the shop, rain had filled the peppermint bowl halfway. She left a note beneath it, roof leak, as if there were any danger she might forget. She got 4 hours of sleep. At the hotel, she put a tray of scrambled eggs where the breakfast potatoes belonged and stared at it for a full 10 seconds. Marlene slid the tray into the correct slot. How's the land barony? Wet, moat, roof, less impressive. Nora poured coffee into a silver urn. I found 43 garment bags. 43 customers? Some bags have 2 things. One has curtains. Thought your grandmother hated curtains. She did. They're labeled evil blue panels. Marlene laughed, then caught Nora suppressing a yawn. You can't work 2 full jobs. I don't have 2 full jobs. I have 1 job and a building full of hostage clothing. Hostages usually bring ransom, not if Grandma forgot who paid deposits. Marlene handed her a banana from the breakfast display. Eat, that's for guests. You're dressed like staff, but behaving like a guest with poor judgment. At 2:15, Nora was back on the number 11 bus, with the banana in her coat pocket and Marlene's words following her. The shop's front window looked less forbidding in daylight, though the brown paper made it resemble a business under investigation. She unlocked the door and nearly stepped on a paper bag. Inside was a sandwich wrapped in foil and a note written on the back of a bank deposit slip. Landlords need lunch. She looked up and down the sidewalk. Caleb's car was parked near the corner, hazards blinking. He emerged from the restaurant next door, carrying a dusty stainless steel machine against his chest. You found it, she said. It found me. It weighs as much as an engine block. He set the espresso machine on the counter with a grunt. His dress shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows. Caleb had worked in restaurants since he was 19 and still dressed as if a manager might appear and ask him to cover a shift. "You broke in?" The door was open. It was locked. "The restaurant guy has a key." Nora looked toward the wall they shared. "He said Grandma gave it to him in case the pipes froze." "Who else has a key?" Caleb shrugged. At this point, "The mayor?" He nodded toward the sandwich. "Turkey, no mustard," I remembered. The kindness annoyed her because it arrived holding an espresso machine he considered his. "What are you expanding into?" she asked. "Small office coffee service." "You don't have an office. Other people have offices. That is the weakest business plan you've ever explained to me." And I attended the presentation about artisanal gravy. The gravy was good. The restaurant lasted 6 months. Location problem. It was between a juice bar and another restaurant. Exactly. Hostile ecosystem. He smiled, then leaned against the counter and surveyed the shop. The smile faded slightly. "You actually worked in here. Were you expecting candles and a seance?" "I thought you'd wait until Friday." "For what?" "Everything to be official. The choir needs its robes at 4. Mrs. Barnes needed her suit yesterday. Apparently, cloth doesn't respect a state administration." Caleb picked up the spiral notebook and read the column headings. "No idea is winning," he said. "Strong early lead." His gaze moved to the peppermint bowl beneath the leak. "That roof's worse." "You knew about it? Grandma asked me to come look last spring." "Did you?" "Yeah, I told her she needed a roofer." Insightful. I also gave her 2 names. She said one had overcharged Elaine for gutters and the other parked across her loading zone, so she did nothing. She put down a bowl. The water struck the glass with a neat plink. Caleb set the notebook down. "Nor, you don't have to keep every promise Grandma made. They're not my promises. Then why are you here?" Before she could answer, the phone rang. Caleb lifted both hands and backed toward the espresso machine. "Not my promise either," Nora answered. It was the owner of Anthony's restaurant asking about 12 aprons Ruth was supposed to mend by Monday. Nora found them in a plastic bin beneath the ironing board. Several had torn ties. 2 had burn holes in the front. "Monday," she said, because Caleb was watching and she refused to sound uncertain. After she hung up, he tilted his head. "You know how to fix burn holes?" "I know how to find Marisol. Solid management." He carried the espresso machine toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I didn't think you'd get stuck cleaning the place alone. You just didn't think about who would do it." His jaw tightened. She expected a joke, but none came. "No," he said, "I guess I didn't." The answer was so plain that Nora did not know where to put her anger. Caleb shifted the machine against his hip. "The sandwich has chips." Then he left. At 4, 3 members of the adult choir arrived together. Mr. Denton, their director, was a narrow man with a voice that seemed built to reach the back row, even when he whispered. 2 women with him tried on the repaired robes and moved their arms through the sleeves. "Better," one announced. "I can praise without losing circulation." Mr. Denton paid the remaining balance in cash. He also placed 6 more robes on the cutting table. "These aren't urgent," he said. "End of next month." Nora stared at them. "We haven't decided what we're doing yet." He looked around the shop. "Seems to me you're doing alterations. I mean, after these orders." "After orders is usually more orders." One of the women patted Nora's arm. "Ruth talked about you all the time." Nora forced a polite smile. "Did she?" "Mostly bragging, occasionally complaining. That sounds more accurate." After they left, she counted the cash twice. $210, including what remained from Mrs. Barnes. She wrote every amount in the notebook, giving each dollar only one place this time. Then she removed Marisol's envelope, added 166, and wrote "paid" across Ruth's yellow sheet. The bell over the door rang. The man who entered was tall and stooped, with a camel-colored overcoat buttoned perfectly to his throat. He carried 3 garment bags over one shoulder. A silver measuring tape hung from his neck like a clergyman's stole. "You are shorter than Leah," he said. Nora had never seen him before. "Hello to you too. Vernon Price." He laid the garment bags across the cutting table and inspected her face without embarrassment. His own face was long and severe, but his eyebrows rose at the outer edges, giving him a permanent look of skeptical amusement. "You have her chin," he said. "People usually mention the eyes. People say eyes when they cannot think of anything." Nora looked at the bags. "Are those the jackets?" 2 completed. One requires buttonholes, and I refuse. Why? Cheap fabric, cheaper interfacing, and buttons selected by a man who should not select things. You took the job. Ruth took the job. I was conscripted. He unzipped the first bag. The jacket inside was dark brown tweed. Its sleeves had been shortened through the shoulders so cleanly Nora could not find the seam until Vernon showed her. "How much does the shop owe you?" she asked. "Nothing. That makes you the first person today." Ruth and I traded work. She altered women's garments I did not care to understand. I corrected the crimes she committed against men's tailoring. You could make the buttonholes. I could also sing bass with Mr. Denton. Ability does not create obligation. Is that why you retired? I retired from customers. I did not retire from sewing. Nora touched the unfinished jacket's front edge. The fabric did feel thin. The marked buttonholes were too close to a puckered lapel seam. What would you do? Return it and explain that the requested alteration will make it worse. Ruth promised it. Ruth occasionally confused stubbornness with character. So, do I return it, or do I keep her promise? Vernon considered her for a moment. Then he took off his overcoat. Move the lamp closer. They spent an hour reinforcing the jacket from inside, using a strip of lightweight fabric Vernon found in a cabinet without asking. He showed Nora how to stabilize the area so the machine buttonholes would not pull. When she rushed the second one, he made a small sound in his throat. "What? You are trying to arrive before you leave. That is not a sewing instruction. It is the only one you need." She cut the bad stitches and started over. When the jacket was finished, Vernon buttoned it, held it at arm's length, and sighed as if disappointed by success. Acceptable. That looks better than acceptable. Then you have low standards. He put on his coat. "Are you coming back?" Nora asked. "I left 6 spools of silk thread here in 2019. I have been coming back whether I wish to or not." That wasn't an answer. It was the answer Ruth received. At the door, he glanced at the task lamps, the papered windows, and the choir robes waiting on the rack. "You should uncover the glass," he said. "I haven't opened. You keep saying that while standing inside an unlocked business." After he left, Nora ate Caleb's sandwich over the cutting table. The chips had gone soft, but he had remembered the mustard. She worked on the aprons until 9, then carried a ladder from the back room and peeled the brown paper from the front windows. The tape left cloudy rectangles on the glass. Outside, the gold letters appeared backward. GNIWESTEERTSLLEB. A woman walking past slowed, peered in, and tried the door. Nora almost pretended not to see her. Instead, she unlocked it. The woman held up a red wool coat with a torn pocket. "Are you open?" Nora looked at the notebook, the garment rack, and Ruth's peppermint bowl catching water one patient drop at a time. "Limited hours," she said, "and I need to see the coat before I promise anything." The woman smiled and stepped inside. That night, Nora wrote "limited hours" on a piece of white cardboard. Beneath it, she added, "Tuesday, Friday, 3/7, Saturday, 10/3. She propped the sign in the window without taping it down. Just until Friday, she told herself. Just until the building was really hers. The woman laid the red coat across the cutting table and pushed 2 fingers through the torn pocket. "My keys escaped somewhere between here and the pharmacy," she said. "Fortunately, they landed in the lining instead of the street." Nora turned the pocket inside out. The fabric had split along an old repair sewn with black thread that looked like fishing line. Did Ruth fix this before? My brother did. He believes owning a needle makes him a tailor. That belief is more common than skill. The woman smiled. That sounds like Ruth. Nora checked the appointment book for prices. Pocket repair appeared several times, usually between $8 and $12. "I can do it for 12. "Only 12? Nora heard the question as gratitude instead of warning. "If the lining isn't torn." "It's not." "When?" She nearly said tomorrow. Ruth's voice seemed to live inside the appointment book, promising Thursday to Gail and Friday to 3 other people whose garments were still somewhere in the room. "Tuesday," Nora said. The woman looked surprised by the wait, but agreed. Nora wrote Lillian on a fresh tag, took $5 as a deposit, and placed the coat at the end of the rack. When the door closed, she added the coat to needs work and drew a box around Tuesday. The page was already starting to resemble a puzzle designed by someone hostile. At 6:30, Marisol arrived carrying a grocery bag full of repaired apron ties. Nora handed her the envelope with $186 inside. Marisol counted it at the counter. All of it, the choir paid. And you paid yourself? I own the building. That was not my question. Nora pulled the bin of aprons from beneath the ironing board. 3 have burn holes. Marisol did not move. How much did Ruth charge Anthony? Nora found the order slip. 96 for all 12. Marisol's expression became very still. What? 12 aprons, new ties on 7, hems on 4, patches on 3. That's what the slip says. $96 is $8 each. I can divide. I am checking. Nora felt heat rise into her face. It's repair work, not making them from scratch. Thread is not free. Fabric is not free. Electricity is not free. My hands are not free, and neither are yours. It's what Grandma quoted. And Ruth is dead with a leaking roof. The words landed hard enough that Marisol's own face changed. I'm sorry, she said. No, you're right. I can be right less loudly. That would be new. Marisol took out the repaired ties. I told her, many times. What did she say? That Anthony sent work every month. That steady work mattered. That his staff brought their own clothes. That if she charged more, he would buy new aprons. Would he? Probably not. But Ruth treated every price increase like a personal betrayal. Nora looked at the order slip. Her grandmother's handwriting was firm and narrow, with no hesitation around the 96. She didn't undercharge Mrs. Prendergast, Marisol added. Who? Woman with the silver evening gown. Ruth disliked her. How much did she charge? Enough. Nora laughed despite herself. So the pricing system was spite. Spite and affection. Terrible for accounting. They spent the evening patching the burn holes from inside. Marisol chose fabric close to the faded black canvas, then showed Nora how to round the corners of each patch so they would not peel back after repeated washing. At the hotel the next morning, Nora used the back of a catering invoice to calculate the hours they had put into Anthony's aprons. She included Marisol's work, thread, patching fabric, and an estimate for electricity. She did not know how to estimate wear on machines, so she wrote, machine, something. The total made $96, looked like an insult written in numbers. Marlene read over her shoulder while eating a piece of bacon she had declared unfit for guests. You forgot taxes, she said. Thank you for bringing darkness into the room. You're welcome. How much would you pay to fix an apron? Depends. Is it my apron? Yes. Nothing. I'd bring it to you and say, I'll get you Friday. Nora turned in her chair. Marlene chewed. I hear it now. You're all Ruth's customers. We're worse. We're friends. At 3, Nora closed the shop early and returned to Ruth's house. The dining room table had been cleared of funeral food and covered with forms. The 2 cash folders sat in front of Paige and Caleb. The unlabeled folder waited at Nora's place. The good shears lay in the center of the table. Elaine had clipped every set of papers together and placed 3 black pens in a straight line. Read everything before you sign. Caleb lifted the top page. I thought that's what we paid the accountant for. We paid him to prepare it, not to lend you a brain. Paige was dressed in cream trousers and a fitted navy sweater. She kept checking her phone. Do you have somewhere to be? Caleb asked. A condo viewing. Already? It's a viewing, not a purchase. Does it have a bathroom light that turns on by itself? Paige ignored him. Nora sat and opened the folder. The agreement said what Elaine had told them it would say. Paige and Caleb would receive the cash accounts. Nora would receive the building at 418 Bell Street and its contents, subject to ordinary expenses and an outstanding property tax payment due in spring. There was no surprise waiting between the lines, no last message from Ruth, no explanation for why she had arranged an estate that required the 3 of them to decide who carried what. The building's appraised value looked generous until Nora reached the attached repair notes. Roof, electrical panel, water heater, rear masonry. She read every page twice. Paige signed first. Caleb signed with a looping signature large enough to occupy the witness line. Elaine made him do it again. When the papers reached Nora, everyone watched her. She thought of the $23 in the shop's cash box, the rent due on her room, the invoice from the choir, the water dripping into Ruth's peppermint bowl. She also thought of Mrs. Barnes looking at herself in the black suit and smiling because her husband had once teased her in it. The second thought was not worth $84,000. She knew that. She signed anyway. Elaine witnessed the signatures and stacked the papers carefully. That's it. Caleb exhaled. Paige looked at her phone. Nora waited to feel trapped. Instead, she felt as if someone had opened a door onto a staircase in the dark. Caleb slid his folder toward himself. So when does the land baron start charging us rent? You've already removed an espresso machine. Estate distribution. You took the cash. I can return the machine. Can it make espresso? Unconfirmed. Paige reached for the shears, then stopped. Her fingers rested on one silver handle. Are these considered contents of the shop? She asked. Elaine gave her a tired look. Your grandmother carried them everywhere. They are personal property. I'm just asking. Nora watched Paige's thumb trace a faint nick in the handle. Ruth had made that mark cutting wire out of a silk flower because she refused to walk 10 steps for the proper tool. You can keep them, Nora said. Paige looked up. I don't need your permission. Then why did you ask? I asked Mom. The old reflex rose in Nora. Give in, make the room comfortable, let everybody leave, believing nothing ugly had happened. She pressed her palm against the folder. Take them or don't, she said. But stop acting like wanting something is the same as being promised it. Caleb looked down at his hands. Paige withdrew hers from the shears. You think that's what we did with the money? I think you wrote your names on it before I sat down. We all agreed. Eventually, what would you have done if I wanted the shop? The question surprised Nora. Paige's expression was controlled, but a pulse beat visibly at her throat. I would have asked why, Nora said. No, you wouldn't. You would have said Grandma taught you to sew, and Mom taught me how to use a credit card. Elaine stiffened. Paige. What? We all know who had the special relationship. Nora almost laughed. Special? You lived with her. After my mother died. I know when. Do you? The room tightened around them. Paige's phone buzzed. She looked at it, gathered her cash folder, and stood. I'm going to be late. She left the shears on the table. Caleb waited until the front door closed. For the record, I would have asked why you wanted the shop too. You said it needed an exorcism. Both can be true. He picked up his folder and kissed Elaine's cheek. At the doorway, he glanced back at Nora. The espresso machine is terrible, he said. You were right. I didn't say it was terrible. You had the energy. When he was gone, Elaine collected the pens. Nora placed the shears inside her folder. Why does Paige think I was the favorite? Because grief keeps score badly. That sounds practiced. I've had practice. Elaine aligned the pages, then sat again. Without Paige and Caleb in the room, she looked older. Not frail exactly. Unarranged? Your mother and Ruth fought about that shop for years, she said. I remember. You remember the end. Nora's fingers closed around the shears. What's that supposed to mean? It means Leah wanted changes, and Ruth heard criticism. Ruth wanted help, and Leah heard control. They could turn moving a spool of thread into a referendum on love. What changes? Elaine shook her head. Ask the people who worked there. I stayed out of it. That's convenient. It was survival. She stood and carried the signed papers toward the hallway. At the kitchen door, she stopped. I wasn't warning you because I think you're weak, Nora. I was warning you because Ruth could give every hour of herself to that place, and still believe she owed it another one. Nora thought of the appointment book, filled through hospice week. I'm not her? I know. Elaine said it gently, but not reassuringly. When Nora reached Bell Street, Marisol was waiting outside with a thermos and a disapproving expression. You are 11 minutes late. I closed early for the estate agreement. And? Nora held up the brass key. Marisol looked at it, then at Nora's face. Congratulations or condolences. I'm taking both on a provisional basis. Inside, Nora put Ruth's shears in the top drawer behind the counter. The shop phone was already ringing. Anthony wanted to know whether the aprons were ready. They'll be ready Monday, Nora said. But we need to talk about the next order. What about it? Our prices are changing. A pause. How much? I'll give you a written estimate after I see the work. Ruth always charged me $96. I know. She knew I brought steady business. I know that too. Another pause, longer this time. Nora could hear pans striking metal in the restaurant kitchen next door. You're not Ruth, Anthony said. The words could have been an accusation or a fact. No, Nora said. I'm not. After the call, she taped the limited hours sign to the window. The moment the tape touched glass, two people waiting on the sidewalk reached for the door. A third approached, carrying a green beaded gown over both arms. Marisol unscrewed her thermos. "You still have time to turn off the lights," she said. Nora looked at the growing line, then unlocked the door. For the next 3 hours, she did not sit down once. The first man wanted his gray pants and had forgotten his claim ticket. The second woman had a zipper in a plastic sandwich bag and no garment attached to it. "I haven't bought the skirt yet," she explained. "I want to make sure you can use this zipper." Nora held up the zipper. It was bright purple, 14 inches long, and designed for something heavier than a skirt. Probably not, but it was $1. You still have the dollar zipper. The woman considered that a victory and left. The green gown customer waited near the fitting room. She was around 40, with closely cropped hair, gold-framed glasses, and an expression of cultivated patience. The gown over her arm was dark emerald silk, covered by a loose layer of beaded mesh. Light moved across it in tiny flashes. "Please tell me you're Ruth's granddaughter," she said. I'm Pamela Wright. My sister recommended Ruth, but every time I called, I got the machine." Nora remembered Pamela's message. It had been number 22, left the morning after Ruth entered hospice. "I'm sorry, she passed away." Pamela's impatience vanished. "Oh no, I didn't know. She had been sick." "I'm so sorry, thank you." They stood with that for a moment. Then Pamela looked down at the gown. "I can go somewhere else." Nora should have said yes. Instead, she asked, "What does it need?" Pamela had bought the gown for an awards dinner the following Friday. The skirt was nearly 4 inches too long, even with her shoes. She stepped behind the fitting room curtain, changed, and emerged in the gown and silver heels. The dress was expensive. Nora could tell before she touched it. The silk lining had weight without stiffness, and the mesh had been beaded by hand in overlapping vines. Shortening it meant removing beads from the new hemline, securing every thread, cutting the mesh, hemming the silk separately, then rebuilding the edge. Marisol crouched beside Nora and looked up at her. "No," she said. Pamela blinked. "No? We are discussing technique," Nora said. "We are discussing a week, 6 days, 5, because you work at the hotel." Pamela turned toward the mirror. "I can pay a rush fee." Marisol rose with a quiet sound that translated into several unkind words. Nora measured from the floor at 8 points around the gown. 160. Pamela did not hesitate. "Fine." Nora had chosen the amount because it sounded brave. Marisol's face said it was not. "Half deposit," Nora added. "Also fine." Pamela stood while Nora pinned the silk lining. The beaded layer shifted whenever the woman breathed. Nora marked the front, sides, and back, then went around again. She knew enough to understand Marisol's objection. She also knew the shop had a property tax payment coming, a roof that dripped into candy dishes, and $23 in the cash box before that afternoon. When Pamela left, Marisol lifted the gown from the counter as though examining an injured bird. 160, she said. "I added a rush fee." "To what?" $80. Marisol looked offended on behalf of numbers. "How much would you charge?" $275 if I liked her." "That's ridiculous. It is an expensive gown. The gown is already made. Yes, and one wrong cut makes it expensive garbage." Nora took the gown from her. "I'm not going to cut it wrong. I did not say you would. You said one wrong cut. Gravity exists whether or not you plan to fall." The afternoon stayed too busy for the argument to continue. "Mister?" Howard tried on his gray pants and declared them perfect, then paid a balance of $18. The woman with the red coat returned because she had forgotten Nora said Tuesday. 2 restaurant servers brought uniform shirts with split side seams. A man asked whether Nora could replace a full leather jacket lining while he waited. "No," she said. "Tomorrow? No. When?" 3 weeks if I can do it at all." He frowned but left the jacket for an estimate. At 6:50, with 4 customers still inside, the limited hour sign felt less like a boundary than a joke. Marisol locked the door at 7 and turned the sign to closed while a woman outside tapped her watch. "Do not look at her," Marisol said. "She can see us. She will still see us tomorrow." The day's cash and card receipts totaled $412. It was more money than Nora had ever made sewing in one day. The feeling lasted until she subtracted deposits belonging to unfinished jobs, materials, Marisol's piecework, utilities, and the amount she would need to hold for taxes. Why is there less every time I add it? She asked. Because arithmetic is honest, rude quality. Marisol poured coffee from her thermos. You charge $15 to repair each uniform shirt. It's one seam. With reinforced stitching and pressing, 22. They would have left. Then let them leave. Nora looked at the garment bags filling the rack. You make that sound easy. It is not easy. It is necessary. What if everybody decides Grandma's granddaughter is greedy? Then perhaps they pay the locksmith to sew their shirts. Nora laughed, but the word greedy stayed. Ruth had treated thrift like a moral virtue, especially when it cost her. She saved thread too short to reach a needle. She washed and reused aluminum foil. Once, when Nora suggested charging a neighbor for 6 hours of work on a formal dress, Ruth had said, "She's had a hard year." Apparently, everyone in St. Louis had been having a hard year for 20 years. Anthony came through the connecting back door at 8 with a tray of chicken, rice, and roasted vegetables. He was a compact man in his 50s with a shaved head and forearms marked by old kitchen burns. "My key still works," he said. "I've been told half the neighborhood has one. Only responsible people. Caleb has one." Anthony set down the tray. "I will return mine." He inspected the repaired aprons. Marisol showed him the inside patches and the reinforced ties. He pulled at one seam, testing it. "Good. Your next order will be $168 for the same amount of work," Nora said. He gave her a long look. "That is almost double. It's $72 more. That is what almost double means. It's $14 per apron. Replacing one costs $27, and the new ones have thinner fabric." "You studied my aprons. I studied the internet." Anthony picked up another apron. Ruth charged $96. Ruth was losing money. She never said. She wouldn't. "Then how do I know you are not simply bad at 96? Nora liked him for asking, though she wished he had asked someone else. She showed him her breakdown: time, thread, patch material, machine use. She had rewritten it twice after Marisol called her first version a donation. Anthony read it, ate a piece of roasted pepper from the tray, and read it again. 144, 168. Steady monthly work, reliable repairs, 156. Marisol drank her coffee without looking at either of them. Nora held out her hand. 160, if the damage is comparable. Anthony shook it. "If Ruth visits me in a dream to complain, I give her your address. She knows where I live." After he returned to the restaurant, Nora stared at their joined back door. "Did I just raise the price? By $64. He didn't leave. He brought dinner." Nora opened the tray. "I may love him. Charge him first." They ate at the cutting table with the green gown hanging nearby. Nora told herself not to look at it. She looked at it every 30 seconds. Saturday brought 11 walk-ins, 3 pickups, and Paige. She entered just before noon, carrying 2 coffees and a cardboard tray. Her eyes moved across the uncovered windows, the customers waiting near the fitting room, and Marisol working at the pressing station. "You're busy," she said. Nora was pinning the hem of a navy dress on a woman who kept turning to see herself in the mirror, apparently. "I brought you coffee. Set it by the register." Paige did, careful not to disturb the piles of claim tickets. She wore a soft gray coat Nora had never seen before. How was the condo? Too small. For what? My life. The woman on the fitting platform laughed. Paige smiled automatically, though her gaze stayed on Nora. "I tried calling," she said. "My phone rings enough here. I meant your cell." Nora moved a pin. "What did you need?" "I wanted to see if you were okay after yesterday." "I'm working." "That isn't an answer." "It was Grandma's favorite." Paige flinched. Nora regretted it immediately, but did not take it back. Marisol approached with an armful of finished aprons. "You are standing where I need to stand." Paige moved. "Sorry. This is Marisol," Nora said. "She worked with Grandma. I know who she is." Marisol gave Paige a measured look. "You used to hide under the cutting table. I was 6. Nora's hand stopped for half a second. Paige looked toward the table. "Grandma gave me crackers down there. She told me Mom thought crumbs attracted mice, but mice also needed lunch." It was such a Ruth thing to say that Nora could see the saltines wrapped in a paper towel. Paige picked up her untouched coffee. "I'll get out of your way." "You don't have to. I clearly do." She set the cup down again, hugged Nora awkwardly around one shoulder so she would not disturb the pins, and left. The woman on the platform watched her go. Sister, cousin. The single syllable contained a complete family history. Nora finished the fitting and worked until after 9. She brought Pamela's green gown to her rented room because the shop lights dimmed whenever she ran the iron and the industrial machine together. On her folding table, she unpicked beads from the planned hemline, dropping each one into a white cereal bowl. At 1 in the morning, she had cleared enough mesh to make the cut. She measured from the pinned edge. Then she measured from the chalk line. The two did not match at the left side seam. Nora stared until the lines blurred. She should have stopped. Instead, she decided the chalk had shifted. She trusted the pins, secured the bead threads, and cut the silk lining. The scissors moved cleanly through it. Only after the severed strip fell away did Nora see that the pins had caught both the outer mesh and the lining at the left hip, pulling the silk upward by nearly 2 inches. She laid the gown flat. One side curved neatly toward the floor. The other rose in a sharp, irreversible slope. Nora stood in the humming room, with Ruth's good shears still open in her hand. Then the laundromat dryers below stopped all at once, and in the sudden silence, she heard herself say, "Oh no." Nora did not move for almost a minute. The strip of silk lay across the table like evidence. She lifted it, matched the cut edges, and tried to imagine a seam hidden beneath the beaded mesh. The repair would shorten the lining further and stiffen one side. She could replace the entire lining, except the fabric was a particular dark green that changed color when held against the light. She could call Pamela and say the gown had arrived damaged. The thought came so quickly that Nora hated herself for it. She checked the time. 1:17. Marisol would be asleep. Vernon might be awake out of pure disapproval, but Nora did not have his number. Ruth's contact list was locked inside the shop. Nora pinned the severed strip back in place without sewing it. Then she folded the gown into a clean sheet and lay on the bed beside it, fully dressed. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the scissors. At 5, the alarm sounded. She carried the gown onto the bus in the gray morning, guarding it against wet umbrellas and takeaway coffee. At the hotel, she locked it in Marlene's office before putting on her apron. "You bringing evening wear to breakfast now?" Marlene asked. "I ruined it." Marlene looked at Nora's face and stopped making coffee. "How ruined?" $700 ruined, maybe more. "Oh." I cut the lining unevenly. "Can it be sewed back?" "Not without looking sewed back." "Can the lady wear it looking sewed back?" She paid for it not to. Marlene poured coffee into 2 paper cups and handed one to Nora. "Call her. I might be able to replace the lining." "Can you?" "I don't know." "Then first find out what you know." At 9, Nora took her break in the loading hallway behind the kitchen and called Paige. Her cousin answered on the 4th ring. "Is something wrong?" "Why would something be wrong?" "You don't call me. I need help finding a dress." A pause. "For you?" "For a customer." Nora read the label and style number from the gown. Paige asked for the size, color, and original store. "What happened?" she said. "I cut it wrong." "Oh, please don't do that." "Do what?" "Say, oh, like mom." I said one word. It had punctuation. Paige exhaled. "Send me pictures of the tags. I'll look." By the time Nora's break ended, Paige had found the gown listed on 3 websites, all sold out in Pamela's size. At 11:30, she texted that a boutique in Chicago had one on the floor. The boutique would not hold it without payment. Price, $748. Overnight shipping, $64. Nora stared at the message beside a cart of dirty coffee cups. Her credit card had a limit of $1,000 and a balance of $219. She had been paying it down $20 at a time for 7 months. She typed, "Ask them to hold it until 3, Paige replied immediately. "They close at 6, they said 30 minutes. Nora called the boutique from the linen closet. The woman who answered confirmed the size and color, but warned that floor merchandise could not be returned. "I need 10 minutes, Nora said. "We can hold it for 10. Her hands shook when she opened the banking app. $382 in checking, most of it needed for rent and the electric bill. The shop account did not exist yet. The cash in the register included deposits for work she had not finished. She called Pamela. "I need to tell you something about the gown." Pamela went quiet while Nora explained. Nora did not blame the pins, the light, or exhaustion. She did not say Ruth's shears had been sharper than she expected. She described exactly where she had cut and exactly why it could not be restored invisibly. "You cut the actual dress?" Pamela asked. "The lining. The beaded layer is intact, but yes, I brought it to you 3 days ago. I know, and you told me you could do it. I was wrong." There was a long silence. Nora leaned against shelves stacked with folded hotel napkins. Through the wall, she could hear plates striking the dish station. "I have an awards dinner Friday," Pamela said. "They're giving me the award. I found a replacement in Chicago. Same size and color. I can have it sent overnight." "At whose expense?" "Mine." Another silence. "Have it sent to me," Pamela said. "Not the shop, of course. And return the gown I brought you." "I will." "You're refunding my deposit." "Yes." "I'm not paying for any work." "No." Pamela's voice remained level, which felt worse than shouting. "I wish you had just told me no." The call ended. Nora stayed in the linen closet until the screen on her phone went dark. Then she called the boutique and gave them her card number. The first charge was declined because shipping pushed her over the available limit. She transferred $100 from checking to the card, waited for the payment to clear, and tried again. Approved. The word appeared in green. Nothing about it felt successful. At 2, Marlene found someone to cover the final hour of Nora's shift. She did not ask permission so much as inform the floor manager that Nora had food poisoning. "I don't have food poisoning," Nora whispered. "You look nauseated. That's debt." Same face. When Nora reached the shop, Marisol was waiting outside. She took one look at the sheet-wrapped gown. "You cut it." Nora unlocked the door. "Yes." Marisol spread the dress across the table and removed the pins one by one. She examined the silk, then held the strip against it. "I could piece it," she said. "Would it show?" "Not while she stands still in a dark room." "So, yes." "Yes." Nora sank onto Ruth's stool. It tilted beneath her, one leg shorter than the others. "I ordered a replacement." "Good. It cost $812. Marisol's eyes closed briefly. "Also refunded the deposit." "Good." "You could say something else." "I told you not to take it. That's not something else." "I am trying very hard not to say that." The bell rang. Lillian entered for the red coat, 20 minutes early, and carrying a box of pastries. "I was passing a bakery," she said. "Then I remembered this place always smells like coffee but never contains food." Nora forced herself off the stool. "Your coat is ready." Lillian put it on and pushed both hands into the pockets. The repaired pocket lay flat. Nora had used matching red thread and reinforced the other side before it could split. Perfect. Lillian reached for her wallet. "The balance is $7. "7?" Nora looked at Marisol. Marisol lifted one eyebrow. "The estimate was 12, Nora said. "But future repairs like this will be 20. That seems more sensible." Lillian paid the 7, added a $5 tip, and left the pastries. Nora watched her through the window. "Why is everybody delighted to pay more after I've charged less?" "Because low prices make good customers nervous and bad customers happy. That should be written somewhere. Write it." Nora opened the spiral notebook to a blank page and wrote it along the top. Pamela arrived at 5:30. Nora had steamed the damaged gown, placed tissue between the folds, and packed it in a white box. She returned the deposit in cash. Pamela opened the box on the cutting table and inspected the cut. Her face tightened. "I wore this when I was promoted," she said. Nora had not known the gown had already been worn. She had imagined it newly purchased, important only because of the dinner. "I'm sorry. I gained weight after that. I spent 6 months trying to fit it again. I found the exact same gown." "It won't be this one." "No." Pamela pressed the tissue paper over the silk. Marisol busied herself at the far machine, giving them the privacy of noise. "You're Ruth Bell's granddaughter?" Pamela asked. "Yes. My sister said she could fix anything. She probably couldn't. That's not what people say." "No, it's just what's true." Pamela looked at her for a long moment. "Call me when the replacement arrives." "I will." She took the box and left without the pastries Nora offered. The replacement arrived the next afternoon. Nora checked the label, measurements, zipper, beads, and lining, before calling Pamela. Paige had arranged for the boutique to send it directly to Pamela, but Nora still asked for photographs. Pamela texted 3 pictures. The dress was correct. No message accompanied them. Nora saved the images anyway. The green gown's cost consumed every dollar the shop had earned and more. Nora put her room's electric bill on the credit card, paid Marisol only for work already delivered, and began keeping deposit money in separate envelopes so she could not mistake it for income. She also made 3 new rules. No rush work without consulting whoever would perform it. No price quoted before the garment was inspected inside and out. No promise made because silence felt embarrassing. Vernon read the rules when he came in with a repaired wool coat. You required an incident to learn each one? He asked. One incident covered all three. Efficient. Nora showed him the ruined green gown, which Pamela had told her to keep after the replacement arrived. Vernon examined the cut. You trusted pins on silk? Yes. Why? I was tired. Tired people trust dangerous things. Pins, ladders, their own memory. I replaced it. That is money. I asked what you learned. Nora pointed to the rules. He studied her, then nodded once. Better. The shop continued filling. Anthony picked up his aprons and left another order, this one priced at $160. Mr. Denton called about 6 choir robes. 2 hotel employees brought pants after Marlene apparently announced that Nora had become expensive enough to be legitimate. Nora began scheduling work 2 weeks out. Some customers complained. One said Ruth never made her wait. Another said Ruth always squeezed in one little job. A man took his torn shirt away after Nora quoted $24, muttering that he could buy a new one for $30. You can, Nora said. The words hurt, but she let him leave. On Friday evening, the phone rang as she was turning the sign to closed. A woman wanted a formal dress shortened by the following afternoon. Nora gripped the receiver and looked at the 3 rules taped behind the counter. I can inspect it tomorrow, she said, but I cannot promise it for tomorrow. The woman sighed. Ruth used to do miracles. Nora looked at the green gown folded in its box beneath the table. I do alterations, she said. Miracles cost too much. After she hung up, Marisol laughed so hard she had to set down the iron. The miracle line is going on the window, Marisol said. It is not. Then on a shirt. I'm not making shirts. You own a sewing shop. People will ask. They already ask. A man called this morning to see if we make boat covers. Do we? No. Good. Boats are curtains with water. Nora wrote the final pickup time in the appointment book and switched off the counter lamp. The task lamp stayed on while Marisol finished pressing a pair of linen trousers. Their pools of yellow light made the rest of the shop look darker than it was. Turn that one off before the iron, Nora said. You are becoming an electrician. I'm becoming afraid of sparks. She had taped labels beneath the switches. Safe with iron, not with iron, and mystery. The outlet beside Ruth's industrial machine belonged to the 3rd category. Vernon insisted it worked. Marisol insisted it had smoked in 2021. Both said Ruth had used it anyway. The shop's money was less chaotic now. Nora bought 3 zipper pouches and labeled them deposits, operating, and Marisol/Vernon. She had not made one for herself. Every evening she counted the operating money, subtracted what the shop owed, and discovered she had successfully earned another day of work. At the hotel, her mistakes grew stranger. She put coffee cups beside the cereal bowls, signed for a produce delivery under Ruth's name, and one morning arrived wearing 2 different black shoes. Marlene noticed before Nora did. Is that fashion? She asked. Nora looked down. One shoe had a rounded toe. The other had a small brass buckle. It's darkness. Management asked why you were late Tuesday. The bus. The bus made you 11 minutes late. You made you 11 minutes too close. Nora restocked jam packets. I need the shift. Then sleep. I do. Closing your eyes on public transportation is not sleep. It's a robbery invitation. Marlene lowered her voice as the hotel manager crossed the breakfast room. You can't keep giving both places, all of you. I'm not. Which place gets what's left? Nora had no answer that would survive saying aloud. On Saturday, Paige entered Bell Street Sewing, carrying a garment bag and a paper cup with only 1 coffee. Marisol glanced at the cup, then at Nora. I didn't know you'd be here, Paige said. I work here. I meant this early. The limited hours sign clearly said 10. It was 10:12. Paige unzipped the garment bag. Inside were the cream trousers she had worn when the estate agreement was signed. They're too long with flats. Nora touched the cuff. Put them on. You can just take up an inch. I can, if both your legs and both pant legs agree. Paige disappeared into the fitting room. When she came out, she stood on the small platform while Nora pinned the hems. I saw the condo again, Paige said. The small one? It didn't get bigger. Maybe your life shrank. I'm serious. So am I. Paige watched Nora in the mirror. The inheritance covers the down payment, but the monthly fees are ridiculous. You could look somewhere else. I like the neighborhood. You don't have to explain it to me. I'm not. Nora placed another pin. Paige shifted her weight. Ow. I didn't touch you. It felt close. Stand still. Paige obeyed for almost 10 seconds. Mom wants to do a post about Grandma, she said, for her birthday. Grandma's birthday was in August. She means a tribute. Then she should call it that. I'm putting together some pictures. Nora stood. There are photo albums at the house. I wanted pictures of the shop. It looks like a shop. That would be the idea. Before Nora could answer, a customer came to the counter with 2 blouses. Marisol began writing the intake ticket, and Nora turned back to Paige. $24 for the hems, she said. For both? Each? Paige stared at her. You're charging me $48? I charge everybody. I'm not everybody. You took $84,000, Paige. There. The grievance she had promised herself she would not keep repeating, dragged out like a chair blocking the aisle. Paige's face closed. Nora removed the final pin. I'm sorry. No, you aren't. I'm sorry I said it that way. That is different. Yes. Paige stepped down and changed. She returned wearing her gray jeans, the cream trousers folded over one arm. Do you want me to leave them? If you want them hemmed, will they be $48? Yes. Paige took out her wallet, placed $24 on the counter, and waited. Half deposit, she said. Nora wrote the ticket. Afterward, Paige photographed the gold lettering on the window, Ruth's industrial machine, the wall of thread, and the old cutting table. She asked Nora to move a stack of invoices because they looked messy. Then she put on Ruth's blue work apron. What are you doing? It's for one picture. You don't sew. I know that. Then why wear the apron? Paige tied it tighter around her waist. Because it was hers. Marisol looked up from the pressing table but said nothing. Paige posed beside Ruth's machine with one hand on the wheel. She took several pictures with a timer, then removed the apron and folded it neatly. You could be in one, she offered. I'm working. Fine. She placed the apron on the counter instead of returning it to its hook. That evening, Paige posted 6 photographs beneath a long paragraph about Ruth Bell's determination, artistry, and the family legacy she left all of us. The final image showed Paige smiling beside the machine in Ruth's apron. Nora's name appeared nowhere. The post brought 31 comments, 200 likes, and 7 calls to the shop on Monday from people asking whether Paige offered sewing lessons. She gave us exposure, Marisol said, watching Nora erase Paige from the message pad for the 3rd time. Exposure is what people die from in winter. She has good lighting. She put her hand on the machine like she was about to drive it. One caller came in with a wool skirt and asked when Paige would be available for the fitting. She won't, Nora said. Oh, I thought it was her shop. It isn't. The woman looked embarrassed. I must have misunderstood the post. No, you understood it exactly. Nora took the skirt anyway. It needed a new zipper, and irritation was not a pricing system. Paige picked up her trousers Tuesday afternoon. The hem was even, invisible, and pressed into a clean break above her flats. She tried them on, checked the mirror, and said, "These are perfect, thank you. Did anyone call because of the post?" "Several people called for sewing lessons with you." Paige's mouth twitched. "That's funny, not after the 4th one. I wasn't pretending it was my shop. You wore Grandma's apron beside Grandma's machine and wrote about what she left all of us. She did leave it to all of us." "Not legally," Paige added quickly. "I mean, as a family." Nora folded the empty garment bag. "You got cash, Caleb got cash, I got the shop. We were all sitting at the same table. So, I'm not allowed to miss her in here? That isn't what I said. It's what you make everything mean." Paige reached for her purse, then stopped. "I'm proud of what you're doing," she said. "You know that, right?" Nora looked at her. "No," she said. The honesty landed between them harder than anger. Paige put $40 on the counter for the remaining balance, 12 more than she owed. "Keep it," she said, when Nora reached for change. "I don't need a tip that big. Consider it exposure." She left before Nora could decide whether to laugh. Elaine arrived an hour later with a file box balanced against her hip. "This was in Ruth's upstairs closet," she said. "It belongs here." The box contained old order books, vendor catalogs, tax receipts, and years of customer cards held together with cracked rubber bands. Nothing was sorted by date. Ruth had labeled one folder important and filled it with takeout menus. Elaine watched Nora lift out a stack of pink carbon forms. "Those are Leah's," she said. Nora recognized her mother's handwriting in the sample lines. Customer name, phone, garment, alteration, promise date, deposit, balance. Each section was printed in block letters because Ruth's old forms had allowed her to write measurements on grocery receipts and sleeves. She made these. She designed them. Had 5,000 printed. Grandma still used scraps of paper. Yes, it was a long war. Nora turned over one of the forms. Leah had written a note on the back. No garment leaves without a number. Below it, Ruth had replied in red ink. People have names. Nora smiled before she could stop herself. Elaine saw. They were funny sometimes. People keep telling me things about Mom and the shop like I wasn't there. You weren't there for all of it. I was there enough. Elaine ran one finger along the file box. You stopped coming before Leah got sick. I stopped coming because they fought every day. They also worked together every day. That doesn't make it better. No. Elaine did not defend either of them. She had a way of stepping back from conflict so neatly that Nora could not tell whether it was wisdom or cowardice. Why did Mom care so much about this place? Nora asked. Elaine glanced toward Marisol, who was threading a machine at the far wall. Ask her. You keep saying that. Because she knows. I left the shop as soon as I could. With Mom, with Ruth. Elaine buttoned her coat. Leah stayed. After she was gone, Nora carried the pink forms to Marisol. What did my mother change? Marisol looked at the top sheet. Many things Ruth pretended not to need. Such as? Order numbers, deposits, the restaurant accounts, work going to people's homes. Anthony? Leah brought him fabric samples. He was buying new aprons every few months. She told him repair was cheaper and better cloth could last years. Nora sat at the cutting table. Grandma always said people depended on her. People depended on the shop. Different thing. Was it? Yes. Ruth wanted every garment to pass through her hands. Leah wanted the work to continue when Ruth was not here. The words touched something Nora did not want touched. Then why was Grandma alone at the end? She was not alone. She was impossible. That's not an answer. Your mother got sick. Vernon retired. I had surgery. Ruth stopped sending out what she believed she could finish herself, even when she couldn't. Marisol looked toward the crowded rack. Yes. Nora picked up one of Leah's forms. Her mother's handwriting looked brisk and alive, irritated by inefficiency. She hated this place, Nora said. Marisol's needle stopped halfway through the fabric. No, she said. She hated what it cost her. The distinction followed Nora into the back room, where she found 3 plastic bins filled with old restaurant aprons. Each bore a numbered pink tag in Leah's handwriting. The numbers ran in order. For the first time, Nora could see her mother in the shop without seeing the hospital waiting room behind her. It lasted only a few seconds. Then the lights went out. Marisol swore in Spanish. From the restaurant next door came the muffled clatter of dishes and a burst of laughter. Their lights were still on. Through Bell Street's front window, the locksmith sign glowed blue. Only the shop had gone dark. Do not touch anything, Nora said. I am standing still. I meant the machines. I know not to so blind. Nora found her phone and switched on the flashlight. The white beam caught hanging garment bags, the silver edge of the cutting table, and Marisol's face floating above a half-finished sleeve. Breaker box is in back, Marisol said. Have you ever reset it? Ruth did. Was there smoke? Once. Why do people keep telling me important things after the lights go out? They walked through the back room. Nora's beam passed over Leah's numbered tags, the bins of old aprons, and a narrow staircase leading to the apartment above. The electrical panel was mounted beside the bottom step, behind a warped plywood door. Nora opened it. A bitter smell drifted out, hot and metallic. Marisol pulled her back by the coat. No, I didn't touch it. You leaned. Anthony came through the connecting door, carrying a flashlight large enough to search a field. I heard the machines stop, he said. Do they usually alert you? The silence did. He aimed his light at the panel. One breaker had darkened around the switch. A faint thread of smoke curled from the top. Anthony shut the plywood door. No one touches that. I had arrived at the same conclusion, Nora said. Call Joe Ramirez. Who's Joe? Electrician. She does my kitchen. Marisol was already unplugging the iron. Joe arrived 40 minutes later in insulated work pants and a jacket with reflective strips. She asked Nora to turn on nothing, then removed the panel cover and made a low sound. Nora had learned that professionals making low sounds around her property generally cost money. "How bad?" she asked. Joe pointed her flashlight at a scorched connection. "This breaker overheated. The panel's old, the bus bar's damaged, and somebody doubled 2 circuits that shouldn't be sharing anything. Can you fix tonight?" "I can make it safe tonight." "Safe means off. When can it be on?" "New panel, permit, inspection, best case, 3 business days." Nora thought of the green gown and corrected herself before asking for a miracle. "How much?" Joe wrote an estimate on a clipboard, $3,200, half before work began. Nora read the total and felt the room tilt. Does the shop come back from the dead for that price? It comes back up to code, less dramatic, more useful. Anthony leaned against the doorway, arms folded. "Do it right." Nora looked at him. "Are you speaking as a man whose restaurant has electricity?" "I am speaking as a man whose last electrical fire began with someone saying it would probably hold." She had $870 in the shop's operating pouch. The deposit pouch held more, but that money belonged to unfinished garments. Her checking account, after the replacement gown and rent, held enough to make her nervous if she rounded up. "Can I pay half now and the rest when it passes inspection? That's how I bill. Can half be 800 now and 800 Friday?" Joe studied her. "Anthony, is she going to disappear?" "Building is difficult to move. I meant her. She is stubborn. That was not the question. It is the relevant answer." Joe agreed to split the deposit. Nora signed the estimate, then stood in the black shop after everyone left and listened to the rain begin. The peppermint bowl was already positioned beneath the leak. 3 days, she said. Marisol turned her phone light toward the garment rack. "Work does not disappear because lights do. We can't use the machines." "I have machines." "Vernon has machines," Nora said. "Vernon has opinions. Machines are less certain." They sorted work by flashlight. Marisol took the choir robes, restaurant shirts, and a stack of simple hems she could finish at home. Nora took hand repairs, intake forms, and every item awaiting a customer decision. The garment bags filled Anthony's largest clean catering bins. At the bottom of the first bin, Nora placed Leah's pink numbered forms. Anthony let them use 2 tables in the back corner of his dining rooms between lunch and dinner. Bell Street's customers came through the restaurant entrance, past a handwritten sign that said, "Suing pickup this way," and found Nora seated beneath a framed photograph of a meatloaf. The arrangement should have embarrassed her. Instead, customers adapted with unsettling ease. Mrs. Barnes brought another skirt. Mr. Howard collected 2 shirts and ordered a jacket repair. Lillian bought coffee while Nora pinned a pair of wool trousers. A woman waiting for her lunch checked the sign and asked whether Nora replaced coat linings. Nora gave her an estimate appointment for the following week. "Ruth would have measured me right now," the woman said. Ruth had electricity. Anthony, passing with a tray, said, "Sometimes." By the second afternoon, Nora had assigned each garment a number, recorded its deposit, attached the customer's phone number, and written where the work had gone. M for Marisol, V for Vernon, N for Nora. No garment left the restaurant without a pink form. She understood what Leah had been trying to solve. The forms were not paperwork for its own sake. They allowed work to move without vanishing into Ruth's memory. They turned the shop from one person into a route. Vernon objected to the letter V. "It is visually aggressive," he said. "It's your initial. My full name would be clearer. There's no room. Then the form is poorly designed. My mother designed it. That explains the narrow margins. You knew her? I spent 15 years correcting her sleeve vents." Marisol said, "Mom brought in the restaurant accounts. Marisol tells long stories. Was she good at the business?" Vernon ran his thumb over the lapel of a coat Nora had brought him. She understood that sewing and running a sewing shop were not the same activity. Grandma didn't? Ruth understood. She disagreed. With what? The idea that anyone else should be necessary. Nora looked toward Marisol, who was finishing a hem at Anthony's other table. "But she used both of you." Reluctantly. "Your mother made the arrangement." Ruth spent years pretending it had occurred naturally. Why? Vernon lifted one shoulder. If she admitted Leah built part of the shop, she would have to admit the shop could survive her. The answer felt unfair to Ruth, and true enough to sting. Nora took the repaired coat from him. You make her sound impossible. She was impossible. You came back. So did you. He left before she could answer. On the third morning, Nora's hotel manager called her into his office. Mr. Wallace kept the room too warm and displayed framed certificates behind his desk, as if breakfast supervision required treaty negotiations. You've been late twice this month, he said. 11 minutes once, 6 the other time. You also left early Monday. Marlene covered me. Marlene told me you had food poisoning. She was being generous. So, you did not have food poisoning? No. Mr. Wallace folded his hands. I understand your grandmother died. Nora waited. And I understand you're dealing with her business. It's my business now. That is exactly the issue. Your responsibilities here haven't changed. I know. Do you? She looked at the schedule on his desk. Her name appeared 6 mornings the following week. I need the hours, she said. Then I need you present for them. I will be. He did not threaten to fire her. That would have been easier to dislike. He simply nodded and said, See that you are. Outside the office, Marlene was lining up cereal dispensers. You tell him the truth? She asked. Most of it. How much did he enjoy being reasonable? Deeply. Marlene tightened a lid. You look worse. That's encouraging. You sleeping? Less expensive than eating. Nora, I'm kidding. Marlene looked at her. Mostly. At Bell Street, Joe had removed the old panel and exposed the snarl of wiring behind it. She worked without conversation, labeling circuits and replacing sections that had been patched badly over the years. Nora climbed the narrow staircase to stay out of her way. She had not visited the apartment since Ruth stopped renting it out. The door opened into a small living room with a sagging floral couch, 2 covered armchairs, and boxes stacked against the wall. Dust softened everything. A kitchen occupied one corner. Beyond it were a bedroom and bathroom with faded blue tile. The windows looked down onto Bell Street. From above, the gold lettering on the shop glass faced the right direction. A radiator clicked beneath the window, though the heat was off. Nora pulled its valve closed. On the kitchen counter sat a jar of pennies, a chipped bowl, and an unopened package of paper napkins. The place was shabby, but larger than her rented room. The thought arrived before she invited it. She could live here. She could stop paying rent somewhere else and walk downstairs to work. Then the floor creaked beneath her, the radiator clicked again, and water shuddered somewhere inside the wall. One collapsing property at a time, she told the apartment. Joe passed the inspection the following afternoon. When she turned on the main breaker, the shop lights came up without flickering. The radio remained silent. The iron heated while 2 machines ran, and nothing dimmed. Marisol stood beneath the task lamp with her hands on her hips. I miss the drama, she said. You can plug something into mystery. No? They carried the work back from Anthony's restaurant. Every garment returned with its pink form attached. Nothing had been lost. Nothing had been promised twice. Work completed in Marisol's house and Vernon's spare room moved on to the finished rack in numbered order. Nora paid Joe the second deposit installment from her hotel check. The shop still owed $1,600 after inspection, due over the next month. The number sat in the notebook like a dare. She reopened at 3. By 4, 6 customers had come through the door. One collected a repaired coat, turned it inside out, and admired the stitching. You did beautiful work, she told Nora. Nora looked at the V on the pink form. Vernon did this one, she said. Oh, I thought you did everything here. Nora glanced at Marisol pressing a dress, at the bins of work waiting to travel, and at Leah's forms lined up beside the register. No, she said, we do. That evening, she replaced the 3 zipper pouches with a second-hand cash box and copied Leah's intake form onto her computer. At the top, where Ruth had once insisted on writing only Bell Street Suing, Nora added a smaller line. Alterations and Repair, by Nora Bell, Marisol Vega, and Vernon Price. She printed one copy at the hotel the next morning. Vernon crossed out the V beside his name and rewrote the entire thing in careful black letters. But he did not ask her to remove it. Vernon's correction became the first thing customers saw when they signed an intake form. He had rewritten Vernon Price in such deliberate capital letters that it appeared less like a name than a warning. Marisol drew a small flower beside hers. Nora left her own alone. The forms worked. Garments stopped disappearing beneath the cutting table. Deposits matched order numbers. Nora could tell a caller where a jacket was without placing the receiver against her chest and whispering, Has anybody seen brown wool? The shop began paying its current bills, not the old roof or the remaining electrical balance, but the heat, thread, Marisol's piecework, and $100 toward Joe's invoice every Friday. Nora paid herself $50 one week and stared at the cash so long that Marisol asked whether she had forgotten what money looked like. She used $32 for groceries and put $18 toward the credit card charge for Pamela's gown. The first serious cold arrived on a Wednesday. Wind pushed wrappers along Bell Street and found every gap in the shop's front door. Nora rolled a fabric remnant into a draft stopper. Marisol wore fingerless gloves at her machine and claimed they made her look artistic. "They make you look cold," Nora said. "Cold artists charge more." At 7, Nora shut off the task lamps and checked the thermostat twice. The heat was working. The repaired electrical panel remained cool. Upstairs, the radiator clicked faintly through the ceiling. She remembered the valve she had closed. Then Anthony knocked on the connecting door with 2 cups of soup, and the thought disappeared. At 3:40 the next morning, her phone rang on the floor beside her bed. Nora woke to Anthony saying, "There is water in your shop." She sat up too quickly. "From where?" "The ceiling." "How much?" "Enough that I am calling before breakfast." She dressed without turning on the overhead light, pulled on the rounded black shoe and the one with the buckle, noticed, swore, and changed one. The number 11 did not run that early. Her Honda had been parked behind the laundromat for nearly a month because the steering pulled left, and the inspection was overdue, but it started on the second try. She drove with both hands fighting the wheel. Water ran beneath Bell Street's front door into the gutter. Anthony had opened the shop with his key and moved garment bags away from the back room. He had also set every bucket, bowl, and wastebasket he could find beneath the ceiling. The peppermint bowl floated inside a plastic laundry tub. "Upstairs," he said. Nora climbed the narrow staircase. Water covered the apartment kitchen floor and moved in a bright sheet toward the living room. One section of ceiling had collapsed over the sink. The radiator beneath the front window hissed, as if offended by the commotion. A pipe had split inside the wall behind it. Anthony found the building shutoff in the downstairs bathroom. When he turned it, the water slowed, then stopped. The silence afterward was broken by steady dripping through the shop ceiling. Nora stood in the apartment with icy water soaking through her shoes. "I closed the radiator valve." "Valve did not split," Anthony said. "Pipe did." "Does that distinction save money?" "No." By 6, a plumber had opened the wall, replaced the burst section, and told Nora what frozen pipes always told people after the fact. There had not been enough heat in the empty apartment. The downstairs thermostat did not control the upstairs radiators properly. One pipe had frozen near the exterior wall and burst when it thawed. Emergency call, pipe repair, new valve, labor, $1,180. Drywall and flooring were separate. Nora paid the plumber's deposit with the shop debit card. The balance in the operating account dropped below $300. At 7:15, she called the hotel. Mr. Wallace answered. "Are you ill?" "No." "A pipe burst in my shop." A pause followed, the kind that meant he was arranging sympathy around a schedule. "I need you here at 8. I have water coming through the ceiling, and I have a breakfast service." Nora looked downstairs. Anthony and Marisol were carrying wet boxes onto the sidewalk. Vernon had arrived wearing rubber boots beneath his perfect camel overcoat. "I can't come." "Nora, I'm sorry. If you miss this shift, we need to discuss whether the schedule still works." She pressed her wet fingers to her forehead. "Then we'll discuss it." Marlene called 5 minutes later. "I told Wallace you were trapped in a flood." "I'm not trapped. Too late. You're trapped and heroic now. He's going to cut my hours." "Maybe. I need those hours." "Then get your ceiling to stop raining before he schedules it for you." She hung up before Nora could argue. The customer garments had escaped damage because Anthony had moved them. The old fabric bins had not. Water soaked through cardboard boxes of zippers, patterns, and decades of scraps Ruth had refused to throw away. The upstairs living room rug released brown water when Vernon and Anthony rolled it. Elaine arrived at 8 carrying bleach, rubber gloves, and a mop. "Who called you?" Nora asked. "Anthony." "How does he have your number?" "He catered Ruth's funeral. He knows everybody. He runs a restaurant. It's his job." Elaine removed her wool coat and tied Ruth's blue apron around her waist without photographing herself. "What can I do?" Nora almost said nothing. Then she pointed to the back shelves. Anything wet has to come out. Customer work stays on the front rack. Elaine began without commentary. At 10, after the worst water had been pushed outside, Nora called Paige and Caleb. Caleb answered first. Paige joined 3 minutes later, her voice hushed because she was at work. The upstairs pipe burst, Nora said. It damaged the apartment and part of the back ceiling. Is anybody hurt? Paige asked. No. The garments? Caleb said. Dry. That's good. Nora looked at the plumber's invoice on the cutting table. The immediate repair is almost $1,200. Drywall and floor will be more. I'm asking if you can each contribute $500. Neither cousin answered. From Caleb's end came the sound of a turn signal. I thought the shop had money coming in, he said. It does. It also owes the electrician $1,600. You replaced the whole panel? It was burned. That was probably the right call. Caleb, I'm saying you made a responsible decision. I'm asking for help. Paige lowered her voice further. I'm in an open office. Then step outside. I can't right now. Nora waited. The empty seconds felt exactly like the family dining room after she asked for the shop. Caleb cleared his throat. I used most of my share to settle the restaurant debts. You got the money 3 weeks ago. The debts existed before 3 weeks ago. I'm aware of how debt works. I'm not sitting on 80 grand, Nora. I asked for 500. And then the roof goes, then the furnace. This is what I was trying to tell you. Buildings eat money. Repairs are an owner's responsibility, Paige said quietly. The sentence was Caleb's. Nora knew it before he agreed. She's right, he said. You own it. You chose the cash. And you chose the shop. The words were not cruel. That made them cleaner. Paige said, I can call you later. Will the answer be different later? I don't know. You do. Another silence. Nora ended the call. She set the phone on the table with care. Elaine continued mopping beneath the pressing station. You heard? Nora asked. Yes. Do you agree with them? Elaine wrung water from the mop. I agree that the shop is yours. Convenient. I also think they could give you $500. Also convenient, since you aren't them. Elaine leaned the mop against the wall. Would you like me to leave? Nora wanted to say yes. Elaine had spent her whole life standing just outside every fight and returning afterward with cleaning supplies. Instead, Nora handed her another pair of gloves. No. They worked without speaking. By afternoon, the sidewalk held a small graveyard of ruined things. Warped pattern boxes, a swollen bookshelf, 2 rolls of muslin-stained brown, and the floral rug from upstairs. Marisol sorted salvageable fabric. Vernon opened every wet garment bag and replaced it with dry plastic. Anthony brought sandwiches nobody asked for. Paige did not call later. Caleb texted the names of 2 drywall companies and added, both reasonable, I think. Nora did not answer. The plumber's balance, replacement insulation, and basic ceiling repair came to $2,300. The shop did not have it. Nora's credit card did not have it. Her Honda, even with a pulling steering and expired inspection, did. A used car dealer offered $2,600. Nora asked for 3, accepted 28, and cried only after the man drove away. She had bought the Honda from a hotel guest 4 years earlier for cash. It was ugly, unreliable, and the only thing she owned that had ever allowed her to leave a place whenever she wanted. Watching it turn the corner felt like watching an emergency exit close. She paid the plumber, bought insulation, and put the remaining money toward drywall and Joe's invoice. Then she gave notice on her rented room. You're moving into the flooded apartment? Marlene asked when Nora told her. The pipe is fixed. The ceiling is open. Only in the kitchen. Luxury. I can't pay rent and repair the building. Marlene folded a hotel napkin into a precise rectangle. Wallace cut you to 4 mornings. I know. He thinks you'll quit. I might. Do you want to? Nora looked at the breakfast room, where she had spent 3 years refilling coffee before people noticed it was empty. I want to sleep. That wasn't the question. No, Nora said. I don't know. Her belongings fit into 6 boxes, 2 garbage bags, and the folding table. Anthony and Vernon carried the boxes upstairs. Marisol brought clean curtains she claimed not to have made. Elaine scrubbed the blue bathroom tile until it looked tired instead of dirty. For the first week, Nora slept on the floral couch beneath 2 quilts and woke whenever the pipes knocked. She kept the apartment warm enough to protect them, even when the utility bill arrived and made her sit down. Living above the shop changed the shape of her days. She could sew before the hotel and after closing. She could also hear the phone ring downstairs at 8 in the morning, 10 at night, and once at 2:17 because someone had confused Ruth's number with a taxi service. The work spread upward. Claim tickets appeared beside her cereal. Thread gathered on the bathroom rug. Nora had to make a rule that no customer garment crossed the apartment threshold. One evening, while clearing the last water-damaged shelves in the back room, she found a tall cabinet swollen shut. Elaine pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside were mothballs, old pattern paper, and a long white garment box marked Leah in Ruth's handwriting. Nora stopped breathing for a second. Elaine saw the name and lowered the screwdriver. "You open it," she said. Nora lifted the lid. Dark navy wool lay inside, cut into the pieces of a woman's coat. The front panels had been basted together. One sleeve was pinned but unfinished. Beneath it rested a paper envelope containing covered buttons and a strip of blue silk lining. No note, no explanation. Only work that had stopped. Nora touched the chalk line along the collar and felt it crumble beneath her finger. The wool was softer than it looked. Nora lifted one front panel by the shoulders. Ruth had marked the pocket placement in white chalk and basted the lapel with uneven gray thread. A few stitches near the waist were so small they had nearly disappeared into the navy weave. Elaine sat back on her heels. "I remember that fabric," she said. "When did she start it?" "The fall before Leah got sick." Nora held the panel against herself. It reached below her knees. Her mother had been slightly taller, broader in the shoulders, but the unfinished coat hung close enough to suggest a body. Why didn't she finish it? Leah lost weight. Ruth said she would wait until treatment was over and fit it again, but she never did. No. Nora found the paper pattern folded beneath the lining. Ruth had adjusted the waist in pencil and written, "Leah, allow for sweater along one edge." Was this supposed to be a gift? I think Leah bought the wool. She and Ruth argued about the color. What was wrong with navy? Ruth thought it was too serious. Grandma wore brown for 40 years. She considered brown practical. Nora traced the edge of the pinned sleeve. Did Mom ask about it? At first. Later, there were other things to discuss, but Grandma kept it. She moved that box every winter. Closet, sewing room, back room. Once she put it in her car because she said the apartment was damp, then drove around with it for 2 months. Why didn't anybody tell me? Elaine sighed. Tell you what, that Ruth had another unfinished thing she couldn't bear to throw away? Nora lowered the panel. That isn't an explanation, Elaine said. It's a coat. I know what it is. Do you? The question should have angered her. Instead, Nora looked at the pinned sleeve and wondered whether she had been asking cloth to testify. Elaine touched the blue silk lining. Your mother would have hated us making it mean too much. Mom made ordering forms because Grandma wrote measurements on grocery receipts. She believed objects had consequences. That is not the same as meaning. What is the difference? I have no idea. Elaine stood and brushed dust from her knees. That's why I stopped sewing. Nora carried the box upstairs. She placed it beneath the apartment window, away from the repaired wall and the radiator pipes, and covered it with one of Marisol's curtains. For several days, she did not open it. There was no time. The shop had grown beyond the stage where Nora could hold every due date in her head. Leah's numbered forms moved through the bins. Marisol took 3 batches of work home each week. Vernon accepted jackets on Tuesdays and returned them Fridays, although he continued insisting this did not constitute a schedule. The new electrical panel survived 2 irons, 3 machines, and Anthony plugging a commercial mixer into the connecting room outlet during a kitchen emergency. The roof still leaked, but only in heavy rain. Nora paid Joe's final invoice, then made the spring property tax payment 2 days before it was due. Afterward, the shop account held $86. Nora printed the receipt and taped it inside the cash box lid. Marisol found it and said, You know the government already keeps a copy. This one is emotional. It is a tax receipt. I paid it. Yes, with shop money. Marisol looked at Nora for a moment, then closed the lid carefully. Then it is emotional. Nora began paying herself enough to buy groceries without calculating the cost of each meal and pant hems. She repaired the apartment's kitchen ceiling, but left the living room wallpaper peeling because it was not threatening anyone. She slept in the bedroom instead of on the couch. She set the alarm for 6 and sometimes woke before it, listening to the pipes hold. Mr. Wallace cut her hotel schedule again. He presented the change as temporary, though the new schedule gave Nora only 3 mornings. You requested reliability, he said. I was late twice and missed a shift. My building flooded. We've discussed this. We have. He folded his hands on the desk. Behind him, the certificates remained framed and calm. Do you want to continue here? He asked. Nora thought about Ruth's habit of answering direct questions with duties. People need breakfast. The shop needs opening. These aprons need ties. She made herself answer the question he had asked. No. Mr. Wallace's expression softened. Then perhaps this is the right time. The gentleness irritated her more than punishment would have. You could have said that before cutting my hours. I believed you needed to decide. You helped. Yes, he said. Sometimes management is disappointing people before they disappoint themselves. Nora disliked the sentence enough to remember it. Marlene took the news worse. You're quitting before the conference season? I thought you'd be happy. I can be happy and inconvenienced. They are close cousins. I'll still hem your pants. I'm not worried about my pants. I'm worried you'll live upstairs and work downstairs until you forget the street exists. I take the bus. That is not a social life. It contains people. Marlene wrapped 3 blueberry muffins in a napkin and put them into Nora's bag. These are for guests, Nora said. You're a guest now. On her final morning, Marlene made the kitchen staff sign a hotel order pad. Most wrote short messages. Good luck, don't forget us. Charge Marlene full price. Marlene wrote only, sleep. Nora taped that note beside the 3 rules behind the shop counter. Without the hotel, she opened Bell Street at 10 4 days a week and kept Mondays for commercial work. Anthony's monthly apron orders, the choir robes, and a new repair arrangement with a small adult theater company gave the shop steadier income than individual hems alone. Nora priced those jobs high enough to pay Marisol and Vernon, maintain the machines, and fund one Thursday evening each month for simple low-cost repairs. The first repair evening brought 27 people and one argument over whether replacing a button counted as simple. It counts, Nora said. It is a leather coat, Marisol replied. It's one button. It is a leather button with a metal shank. The coat's owner watched them like a tennis match. Vernon took the coat, replaced the button in 4 minutes, and charged regular price. You have undermined the community program, Nora told him. I have preserved civilization. The shop was not rich. Nora still used a bucket when rain blew from the east. She still turned down work that required equipment they did not have. Some weeks, the premium jobs covered the repair evening and nothing more. But on most mornings, 3 task lamps came on. Machines began humming in different corners. Garments moved in, out, and through people's hands without depending on one person's memory. Paige and Caleb arrived together on a Monday, while Nora had Leah's coat spread across the cutting table. They had made an appointment, though Paige called it stopping by. Caleb wore a blazer Nora suspected Vernon would reject. Paige carried a laptop and a paper shopping bag. We brought lunch, Caleb said. You brought a meeting, Nora replied. We brought both. Meetings with sandwiches are less hostile. Paige set the laptop on a clear corner of the table. Can we talk before you decide you're against it? What is it? An idea. Those cost extra. Caleb smiled. Paige did not. She opened the laptop. The screen showed a cream-colored logo, Bell Street Heritage, with a gold needle beneath it. Nora looked at the words, then at Paige. It's a concept, Paige said quickly. Not final. What is the concept? A small collection, work aprons, sewing kits, maybe simple linen pieces. Everything inspired by Grandma, handmade where it makes sense, responsibly produced where it doesn't. Produced by whom? We would figure that out. Who is we? The 3 of us. Caleb lifted the shopping bag. I'm mostly lunch. Paige clicked to the next slide. Photographs of Ruth's machine and the gold window lettering appeared beside color swatches labeled navy, thread gold, paper cream. One photograph showed Paige and Ruth's apron. You used the tribute pictures. They tested well. With whom? Friends, people from work, my followers. Nora looked toward the back room. Marisol and Vernon had both gone home. The shop seemed too quiet without them. Paige continued. People responded to the history. They like that it's real, not another brand invented in a marketing meeting. We're in a marketing meeting. You know what I mean. No, explain it. Paige closed the laptop halfway, then opened it again. The shop has a story. Grandma built something lasting. You've proven there's interest, but alterations only scale so far. Why does it need to scale? To become more than one storefront? It already is more than a storefront. Caleb pulled out a chair. No one is criticizing what you've done. You made a slide presentation explaining why it isn't enough. We're talking about growth, Paige said. Revenue, an online presence, products that don't require you to spend an hour fitting somebody. Products somebody else spends an hour making, which creates work. For whom? We would find partners. Nora glanced at the coat pieces. Paige followed her gaze. That, Paige said. That is exactly what I mean. Don't touch it. I wasn't going to. What do you mean? The coat. Is it Grandma's design? It was for my mother. Paige's expression shifted, curiosity overcoming caution. Leah? Yes, the navy is perfect for the collection. Nora covered the front panels with pattern paper. It isn't a collection. I'm not saying we sell that coat. We could use details. The buttons, the lapel, maybe tell the story. What story? Paige stopped. What story would you tell about it? Nora asked. That Grandma started it before Mom got sick and couldn't finish? That it sat in a cabinet for 8 years because nobody knew what to do with it? Which part sells aprons? I didn't know any of that. Exactly. Caleb leaned forward. This got personal fast. It arrived personal. We are family, Paige said. Grandma's name belongs to us too. Her name does. The shop is mine. You always go back to the money. You came back to the shop. Paige stood. Because I'm trying to help you. I didn't ask. That doesn't mean you don't need it. Nora felt Ruth's old refusal rise in her, the instinct to reject assistance before it could become control. She looked at the order board, the payroll envelopes, the repair schedule, the intake bins. This was not instinct. It was evidence. Marisol gets paid here, she said. Vernon takes work because he trusts how it's handled. Anthony sends orders because we deliver them. Customers leave clothes their mothers wore and jackets their husbands died in. You're talking about the shop as if it's a background for a product launch. That's not fair. It's accurate. Caleb stood too. You could make more money. I make enough. You sold your car because neither of you would give me $500. His face tightened. I told you why. You told me repairs were an owner's responsibility. The work is too. Paige closed the laptop. You are so determined to believe we abandoned you that nothing we do can count as caring. Taking pictures counted for you. I was proud of her. You were standing where she worked. And you think you're the only person allowed to grieve there. Nora's voice dropped. Grief does not give you a job. Paige went pale. Caleb stepped between them, not physically, but with his tone. Let's take a breath. No, Paige said. She wants the shop to prove she was the only one who really loved Grandma. Let her have it. She shoved the laptop into its sleeve. Nora heard herself say, You took what was easy and left me what hurt. Paige held the laptop against her chest. You asked for it, she said. Then she walked out. Caleb remained long enough to put the sandwiches on the counter. For what it's worth, he said. The online idea wasn't terrible. Neither was artisanal gravy. That was low. So was the rent on your restaurant. You still found a way. He almost smiled, but the fight had taken the humor out of him. When he left, Nora locked the door and turned the sign to closed, even though 2 hours remained. She uncovered Leah's coat. The sleeve cap would not sit correctly. Ruth had cut it with more ease than the pattern called for, perhaps to accommodate Leah's shoulders, perhaps by mistake. Nora pinned it once, twice, then a third time. Each attempt produced a pucker near the back seam. She heard Marisol's voice in her head. You are trying to arrive before you leave. Nora removed every pin. For the first time since finding the coat, she admitted that she could not finish it alone. The admission irritated her enough that she left the coat on the table overnight. In the morning, Marisol found it beneath the pattern paper. She lifted one corner, saw the navy wool, and removed the covering slowly. Leah's coat, she said. You knew about it? I knew Ruth started one. Did you know where it was? No. Everybody knows half of everything. That is why people talk. Nora placed the sleeve beside the armhole. I can't make this fit. Marisol studied the pattern pieces, then the chalk marks. She pressed the sleeve cap between her fingers. Ruth added width here. I saw that, but not evenly. Leah's right shoulder sloped. From what? Being built like a person. Nora took offense before realizing Marisol was teasing her. I need a fitting, she said. Unless you know anyone who can arrange that. You are close. I'm shorter. coat is long. My shoulders aren't the same. No shoulders are the same. Put it on when it is basted. They spent the morning assembling the shell loosely. Marisol handled the sleeve cap, while Nora eased the wool into place. The first attempt twisted toward the back. The second sat better, but pulled beneath the arm. Vernon arrived, removed his coat, and looked at their work. "Who pressed this seam?" "I did," Nora said. "Why?" "To flatten it. You have achieved flatness." "Thank you." It was not praise. He examined Ruth's pattern, then held the coat against Nora's back. "Leah stood differently," he said. "So, I've heard. Your mother led with her right shoulder, as if every room required entering before the rest of her arrived." Nora looked at him. "You remember that? She knocked over my chalk twice a week." They opened the sleeve seam again. Vernon adjusted the underarm. Marisol redistributed the fullness, and Nora basted while both of them gave conflicting instructions. "Toward you," Vernon said. "Toward me or toward the machine. Those are currently the same direction." "No, they aren't." Marisol moved the fabric herself. "This way." "That is away from her," Vernon said. "It is toward me. You are not sewing. I am now." Nora let go of the coat. "You two finish it." They objected in unison. By closing, one sleeve sat properly. The other remained in pieces. Nora hung the shell on a padded hanger in the apartment. Each morning, she passed it on her way downstairs. Some days it looked like progress. Other days it looked like Ruth had merely found a taller place to abandon it. Work gathered around the coat and carried the year forward. Rain stopped blowing beneath the shop door. The bucket remained dry for weeks, then returned during summer storms. Nora paid for a roof patch that held over the fitting room and failed above the back stairs. She learned to celebrate partial success. The monthly repair evening became a fixed part of Bell Street's calendar. Anthony supplied coffee. Marisol repaired simple hems at one table. Nora handled zippers and pockets. Vernon continued charging regular price for leather buttons, but he stopped pretending he had arrived accidentally. The shop paid them. It paid its utilities. It paid Nora enough to eat upstairs and occasionally somewhere with a waiter. It did not produce a fortune, and nobody discovered gold beneath the floorboards. When the sink clogged, the sink simply cost $200. Paige did not come back. She liked Bell Street's social media posts, which Nora had begun making only after Marlene threatened to create an account called expensive enough to be legitimate. Paige never commented. Caleb texted twice. The first message contained a photograph of the espresso machine leaking brown water across his counter. "You were right," Nora replied. "About many things." The second message asked whether she knew anyone who repaired commercial coffee equipment. She sent Anthony's recommendation and nothing more. The approach of Ruth's birthday came with cool mornings and a request from Elaine. "Are you doing anything at the shop?" she asked. "Repair evening is Thursday. I meant for Ruth." Nora looked at the wall calendar. Ruth's birthday fell the week before the first anniversary of her death. Paige had posted her tribute early enough that the two events had blurred together in Nora's mind. "I don't know. Your grandmother hated birthday parties. She hated other people's birthday parties. At hers, she wanted coconut cake and compliments. She wanted useful compliments." "What is a useful compliment?" "Specific and preferably about her stitching." Nora smiled. Elaine opened her purse and took out a small envelope. Inside were 12 photographs she had removed from Ruth's albums. Most showed the shop, Ruth at the industrial machine, Marisol holding up a bridal veil with a look of suspicion, Vernon wearing a measuring tape and refusing to smile, Anthony, younger and still with hair, standing beside a tower of new black aprons. One photograph showed Leah at the cutting table with a stack of pink forms. Ruth leaned over her shoulder, pointing at something. Both women were laughing. Nora turned it toward the light. When was this? The year Leah started the restaurant accounts. Who took it? Probably Paige. She scanned the albums for that tribute. Nora set the picture aside. "I'm not making a heritage collection. I didn't ask you to. You looked like you were asking something. I was asking whether you planned to mark the anniversary. That is not the same as her birthday. No, it's about you too." Nora put the photographs back into the envelope. Elaine waited. "We'll do an open shop," Nora said. "Nothing dramatic. Cake, pictures, maybe the repair evening on Saturday. Coconut? Obviously." Elaine nodded. At the door she said, "Paige should be invited. You invite her. I'm asking you. I noticed." Elaine left without winning. Nora displayed the photographs on the cutting table for Marisol and Vernon. Vernon objected to his picture. My posture was poor. You were leaning over. I had no reason. Marisol tapped the photograph of Leah and Ruth. They had been arguing. They're laughing, Nora said. Ruth wrote the restaurant phone number in the deposit box. Leah said even a thief would return it rather than call Anthony. What happened after the picture? They argued again. About what? I do not remember. Nora believed her. The ordinary fights had vanished. Only the shape of them remained. She propped the photograph beside Leah's unfinished coat. The second sleeve took 3 attempts. Once the shell was complete, Nora put it on. The shoulders were slightly broad, the waist loose, and the hem fell lower on her than Ruth intended. In the long mirror, the navy wool made her look older, not like Leah exactly, like a woman wearing something built for a person she had known from inside a different life. Marisol pinched the side seam. We can take this in? No, it will fit better. It fits her. Marisol met Nora's eyes in the mirror. The coat cannot fit memory, she said. I know. Do you? Apparently no one in this family knows what a coat is. Marisol smiled. Leave the waist. Shorten sleeves for you. They completed the outer shell, then began the lining. The blue silk had weakened along one folded edge and required piecing. Nora cut a replacement strip from fabric Marisol found in her own collection. It was not an exact match. Vernon said anyone who noticed the interior side seam deserved to be removed from the coat. A week before the anniversary, Nora texted Paige. Do you have the high-resolution file of Mom and Grandma at the cutting table? Paige replied 3 minutes later. Yes. Then, do you want the other shop pictures too? Nora typed, please. Paige brought them in person. She arrived after closing with a flash drive and a paper folder of prints. Her hair was shorter. She wore no makeup and carried no laptop. I thought you might want physical copies, she said. Thank you. Neither of them mentioned the last time Paige had stood beside the cutting table. Nora inserted the flash drive into the shop computer. The folder contained more than 100 images from the albums. Ruth posed beside finished dresses, Leah labeling bins, Elaine standing in the doorway with her coat on, clearly ready to leave, Caleb asleep in Ruth's chair at an adult family gathering years later, an empty plate balanced on his chest. Paige saw the navy coat hanging near the fitting room. You finished it. Almost. It's beautiful. Thank you. Paige approached but did not touch. I'm sorry about what I said. Which part? Most of the presentation. That was a lot of slides. I deleted it. You didn't have to. I know. The lining waited on the table, one side basted and the other tangled, where Nora had attached it backward, discovered the mistake, and stopped. Paige picked up the seam ripper. Can I help? Nora almost said no. You don't sew. I know how to remove stitches. Grandma taught me after I sewed a pillowcase shut. When? A long time ago. Nora looked at the seam, then pulled out the chair. Only the blue basting thread, not the small navy stitches. Paige sat. For 10 minutes they worked without speaking. Paige cut each basting stitch and pulled the thread free with her fingers. She was slow, but careful. I wanted the cash because it was simple, she said finally. Nora continued pinning the opposite side. Money is famously simple. You know what I mean. It had a number. It didn't need anything from me. The condo did. I didn't buy it. Nora looked up. Paige kept her eyes on the lining. I kept finding reasons not to. Wrong fees, wrong light, wrong neighborhood. I think I wanted to be the person who bought it more than I wanted to live there. What does that have to do with the shop? Everything Grandma gave you seemed to mean something, even when it hurt. I thought if I got the money first, I'd have something definite before you got whatever was left. You got more. I know. You and Caleb made the decision before I arrived. I know. The seam ripper stopped. We knew you'd deal with the house and the clothes and all the parts that made us feel guilty, Paige said. We called it practical because that sounded better than scared. Nora's throat tightened. I asked for the shop. Yes, and we were relieved. You took the risk and we got to leave. Neither of them moved. Paige looked toward the front window. Then you made it work, and I came back wanting my name on it. You wanted Ruth's name. I wanted to stand close enough that people thought I had done something. The honesty was ugly and clean. Nora handed her the small scissors. There are 6 more basting stitches under the arm. Paige accepted them. It was not forgiveness, it was work. They finished removing the lining at 11. Paige swept the blue threads from the table into her palm instead of brushing them onto the floor. At the door, she asked, "Am I invited Saturday?" "Elaine already invited you. I'm asking you." Nora looked at the coat, open and unfinished but no longer abandoned. "Yes," she said. "Come early. We'll need help." Paige nodded. The next afternoon, Caleb appeared in the doorway while Nora was pinning the corrected lining. He did not carry coffee, lunch, or a broken machine. "I need to ask you something," he said. Caleb remained in the doorway, as if the answer might depend on whether he entered. Nora put down the pin. "What do you need?" $4,000. She waited for the joke. He looked past her instead, toward the numbered bins and the order board. "For what?" "The coffee service. I signed a lease on 2 commercial machines after a company agreed to take both. They backed out, and I'm paying storage plus the equipment lease. If I can settle it now, they'll take the machines back. What happened to your inheritance? Restaurant creditors? Taxes? The espresso machine that should have been thrown from a bridge, then deposits on the commercial equipment. You spent $84,000. I owed most of it before I got it, and you invested the rest. I thought I could turn it into income. So did I." His eyes moved to the navy coat. "I know." Nora closed the intake form on the counter. "I don't have $4,000 to loan you. I saw your operating numbers on the heritage proposal. You saw guesses Paige made. She said the shop was doing well. It is doing well. Then, doing well means the shop pays Marisol and Vernon on time. It means the tax bill gets paid before the lights. It means I have enough set aside that the next pipe doesn't cost me my bed." Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not asking you to empty the account. The roof still needs replacing. I'd pay you back." "With what?" He looked irritated, then ashamed of being irritated. "I'm trying to figure that out. I'm sorry." "Are you?" "Yes. Because this feels a little like the 500. Nora leaned against the cutting table. "You told me repairs were an owner's responsibility. There it is. I'm not saying it to punish you. I'm saying you were right. That's convenient now. It wasn't convenient when I sold my car." He looked down. The shop phone rang. Nora let the machine take it. Ruth's recorded voice filled the silence. "Leave your name, number, and what I told you I'd have done, because those may be 3 different things." Caleb smiled despite himself. After the beep, a man began asking whether his navy trousers would be ready Saturday. Nora waited until he hung up. "I can help you read the lease," she said. "I can sit with you while you call them. I can't give you shop money. You sound like Mom." "I'm sorry again." That one felt more sincere. Caleb walked to the coat. "Is this Aunt Leah's?" It was supposed to be. He touched one covered button with the back of his finger. "She helped me get my first restaurant job. I didn't know that. She made me practice carrying plates in Grandma's dining room. Every time I dropped one, she added another." "How many did you break?" "None. They were paper." Nora laughed. Caleb put his hands into his pockets. "Can I come Saturday? It's an open shop." "That's not what I asked." She understood. Apparently everyone in the family had decided invitations required individual hearings. "Yes," she said. "Come early. Anthony needs help with coffee. I have a complicated relationship with coffee equipment. Use a regular pot." He nodded and headed toward the door. "Caleb," he turned. "Bring the lease tomorrow. I'll look." His face loosened, but she held up a hand. "Still not lending you money. I heard you. Historically, not a guarantee." He left smiling faintly. Paige arrived Friday evening to help finish the coat. She wore jeans and a plain black sweater. She did not bring a camera. Marisol had already set the lining into one side. Vernon was shaping the collar with steam, muttering about Ruth's decision to use more canvas than necessary. She wanted it to last, Marisol said. It would survive a minor collision. Leah drove fast. That was not my concern. Paige washed her hands, then stood beside the table. "What can I do?" Nora handed her the envelope of covered buttons. "Sort these by size. They look the same. They aren't." Paige poured them onto a white cloth and measured each with a small ruler. She found 2 that were slightly narrower. "I hate this," she said. "You wanted a product line. I was a different person then. It was 3 weeks ago. Growth can be rapid. They worked until 10. Marisol sewed the lining by hand around the armholes. Vernon pressed the lapels. Nora made the final buttonholes, while Paige held the thread ends clear of the machine. When the last button was attached, no one announced that the coat was finished. Nora simply lifted it from the table and placed it on the padded hanger. The navy wool fell cleanly from the shoulders. The blue lining showed only when the front moved. Ruth's chalk marks had disappeared beneath seams. Her basting thread lay in the wastebasket with Nora's and Paige's. Vernon adjusted the collar by half an inch. "Now it is finished," he said. Nora tried it on. The coat was still loose at the waist, and Leah's right shoulder gave it a subtle asymmetry. The shortened sleeves ended exactly at Nora's wrists. She buttoned it and faced the long mirror. For 8 years, every attempt to imagine her mother had begun at the hospital. Leah under a thin blanket. Leah, too, tired to lift her head. Leah asking Nora whether Ruth had called. The coat offered another body. Leah choosing navy wool. Leah standing still while Ruth marked her shoulders. Leah arguing about the length and expecting enough future to wear it. Nora touched the top button. "It looks like yours," Paige said. Nora met her cousin's eyes in the mirror. "It can be both." Saturday morning, they hung the coat in the front window. Beside it, Nora arranged the photographs. Ruth at her machine, Marisol with the veil, Vernon pretending not to pose, Anthony beside the aprons, Leah holding her numbered forms. The newer photographs showed Marisol and Vernon at work, Anthony carrying food through the connecting door, and Nora standing beneath the gold lettering with a measuring tape around her neck. Paige had taken that last picture Friday evening, only after asking. Elaine arrived with coconut cake at 9:15. "You said early," Nora told her. "This is early. You were expected at 9. I am not an employee." Marisol, setting out thread at the repair table, said, "Then cake goes in the back." Elaine carried it obediently to the back. Caleb arrived with 2 coffee urns and his equipment lease. He put the lease upstairs on Nora's kitchen table without mentioning it again, then spent half an hour discovering that Anthony's coffee measurements were based on a scoop nobody could locate. "Just make it strong," Anthony said. "How strong?" "Strong enough to forgive cake." By 10, customers filled the shop. Mrs. Barnes came wearing the black suit jacket over a red blouse. Lillian brought pastries despite the coconut cake. Mr. Denton arrived with 4 members of the adult choir, all of whom claimed their robes had remained perfect and then produced small repair requests. Marlene walked in, carrying a hotel order pad. "You're not working today," Nora said. "I'm a guest. You stole that pad." It followed me. Pamela Wright appeared shortly after noon. Nora's hands went cold when she saw her. Pamela carried a black wool coat, folded over one arm. "I need the lining replaced," she said. Nora touched the coat, but did not take it. "I'll have to inspect it," I assumed. "It may take 3 weeks. I'm not in a rush." Pamela's mouth shifted toward a smile. "The replacement gown was good," she said. "Not the same, but good." "I'm glad. My sister still says this is the only place she trusts with a lined coat." Nora looked at her. "That is not why I came," Pamela added. "I came because you told me the truth before I had to discover it wearing the dress." She placed the coat on the counter. "Give me an estimate." Nora filled out one of Leah's pink forms and assigned the coat a number. The repair table stayed full through the afternoon. Paige handled intake beside Nora. She wrote slowly, repeating every phone number and deposit amount before attaching the tag. When someone recognized her from the old tribute post and asked whether she worked at Bell Street now, Paige shook her head. "I'm helping today," she said. Then she pointed across the shop. "Nora runs it. Marisol and Vernon do the work with her." Nora heard, but did not turn around. At 3, Elaine cut the coconut cake. Anthony switched off one coffee urn before it burned empty. Mr. Denton raised his paper cup. "To Ruth," he said. The room answered with her name. Elaine looked toward the window, where Leah's coat hung among the photographs. "Ruth would be proud of all 3 of you," she said. Paige set down the stack of plates. "Nora did this," she said. Everyone went quiet. It was not the silence from Ruth's dining room, thick with calculation and things nobody wanted to name. This silence made room. Nora looked at Marisol, whose fingerless gloves had been replaced by a gold thimble. At Vernon, standing beneath his old photograph and disapproving of the angle. At Anthony, holding a coffee pot in each hand. At Paige beside the numbered forms. "Not alone," Nora said. Marisol nodded once. Vernon adjusted his cuff. Caleb looked at the operating board, the paid invoices clipped beneath it, and the customers waiting with clothes over their arms. "You ever regret taking it?" he asked Nora. "The shop?" He nodded. "Every day for the first month, then mostly Tuesdays." A few people laughed. Caleb did not. "I regret taking the cash." Nora studied him. "You needed to pay your debts. I needed a clean answer. Money looked like one. There aren't clean answers in this family." "No." He looked toward the navy coat. "The lease company will take the machines back if I pay 1 month's penalty. That sounds survivable. It will hurt. Those can both be true." He smiled. "You sound like Marisol." "Better than Mom." "Different department." The crowd thinned after 4. Mrs. Barnes took the remaining cake. Anthony carried the empty urns next door. Vernon left after insisting the repair table had been placed too close to the window. Caleb folded chairs without being asked. Paige swept blue and gray thread from beneath the machines. Elaine washed the cake knife upstairs and placed it in Nora's kitchen drawer as if it had always belonged there. When they were ready to leave, Paige stood with her coat on, but unbuttoned. "Next Thursday is the repair evening?" "Yes." "Do you need intake help?" Nora considered her. 6 to 8, she said, "and you get paid." I took $84,000. Work gets paid here. Paige looked down, then nodded. 6 to 8. After everyone left, Nora locked the front door. The shop smelled of coffee, wool, machine oil, and coconut. Leah's coat remained in the window, dark against the gold letters. Nora turned off the pressing station, the machines, and the counter lamp. The 3 task lamps went last. Upstairs, the pipes knocked once and held. Nora set a leftover slice of cake beside her bed and opened the window curtain just enough to see the street. Below her, Bell Street sewing rested until morning,